Schultz in for Swigard today. Swag did a basketball game.
He had worked very hard this weekend. I had to talk to Swigard at 12:30 on Saturday night. I'd never want to talk to Swigard after midnight. I don't need swag in my life that late at night.
Is that what time the post game was?
Something like that. Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark. What time did you get home on Saturday, Schulte?
Like 2:15.
Golly.
2:15 a.m.
Yeah. And so I grabbed like one of the only places that was open, fast food wise, and my burger had a hair in it. So that was
short and curly.
Yeah. No, not a short and curly, a long clump.
A clump? That's the worst kind.
And you just know, like, I've been with my wife now for 12 years, married for over 2. I love her to death. I know her hair. It was not hers. And I made that summation very quickly, and I was extremely gross.
Why didn't you eat the media food? Why did you need to go to a burger joint?
I did eat the media food. It was just late. I mean, God, the game started at like 7:45, actually. It was a 7:30 kick, got pushed to 7:45. I'd been there with Dirt since 3, and it was a hell of a time for me getting down there anyways, so I was just extra hungry.
Schulte's always coming in hot. Whenever he comes somewhere, he's always just steamrolling into town. I do have a question, though. Did you eat the burger?
I mean, I had already gotten halfway through it.
You did.
No. I'd gotten halfway through it, then discovered it immediately upon discovering it in the trash.
You threw it away? Okay.
Yeah, no. It's like
halfway through discovered.
Yeah, it was like, I guess I got the clean half. I don't know how that works. I don't know how to describe it.
I'm going to take, night games are fun. They're a great time.
No, they're not.
No, they're not. They're great when you watch them on TV. Like, I don't mind being on my couch and then the game's over at like 10:30 and you're like, okay, it's time for bed. Wander over to your bedroom. Like, that is totally okay. Being at a night game, like, no, thank God there's not more than one of those a year. Like, I'm not cut out for this, man. I can't stay up that late anymore.
Well, but see, the night game, this is the problem with the night game. It breeds irresponsibility.
It totally does.
It breeds bad decision making.
The lack of sleep. You don't get to be a fully functional human on Sunday.
Schultz, you were there from 3 o'clock, you said? You got there at 3? I don't know what time your post game started.
Like
5:30?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, so.
And you got home at 2:15.
Yeah. And Swag didn't even call me at the end of the show, so I didn't even get to do my.
Was supposed to call you?
I am on the list. It says prepare for phoner with Swag.
No, he texted us Dirt and Dusty, which I find it interesting. Like, Dusty's actually worked the whole game. Like,
he did, yeah.
Dirt did the pregame show, but Dirt got to mosey around that sideline for most of the time he was down there.
I'm just kind of moseying. I just mosey around. Schulte's the one that does the postgame audio interview stuff. He's the one that's in the trenches.
Are you asking any questions? Because I'm watching these postgames and I'm trying to listen for voices.
Usually, yeah. No, actually, I think it was just too many people, or the SID just didn't want to hear from me because I raised my hand a couple of times.
Really?
Did not get a question in, but one of my answers
didn't
went
get called
viral.
on.
A couple weeks ago, the whole blood in the water thing, that was my question that I asked Coach Lanning.
Blood in the water?
Yes, he said, I asked Coach, I said, it seemed like you started to get into a groove going into halftime. What did you say to your guys to keep that going? And he's like, well, we said we tasted blood in the water and we were going to keep going. And that was all over X. So, and actually, it was Dirt that told me.
Oh. It was. I saw that answer. And then I went back and watched the press conference and I was like, hey, that was a Schulte question. Well done, Schulte.
Well, I think you need to be asking more questions. I caught one yesterday towards the middle back end of his press conference in the post game where a media reporter, I don't know where she works, but she asked the question, what's motivating your team?
Oh, yeah. She got
Friendship.
She got called on instead of me. It was great. And that is what the answer was.
We like each other. That's why we're playing
Brotherhood.
hard.
Dan is nice enough. Lanning is nice enough to go with it instead of going, winning.
What?
The whole thing.
Talking about right now.
I mean, I guess in everybody's defense, it was like midnight at that point.
Nah, that's your job. Like, take a nap and get ready and go to work, ask good questions.
I was going to ask a good one. I was going to...
What was your good question?
Well, Coach brought up before we took questions, he's like, we sometimes have to deal with questionable calls. Don't want to get too deep into that. And I was going to be like, Coach, how do you get through in the moment a questionable pass interference call where it looks like the receiver just fell down and your guy didn't do anything? What do you say on the sideline after that? Because you want to be aggressive, but there's got to be a message that you can give. I wanted to try and bring it up and kind of tee up the whole it didn't look like you got any favorable calls on the defensive side of the ball there. So unfortunately, didn't get that chance.
Well, it all starts with our position, right? We got to be in the right spot, right? right.
You got to fight for the program, and this is not acceptable.
We take full accountability for everything we do, right?
Higher standard.
At the same time, I'd like to see it be a little more physical.
That's a pretty good impression. I like that.
I've
That
watched
was
a
good.
lot of his press conferences.
That's pretty
this year.
solid.
I've watched more press conferences this year than I ever have.
Yeah, I don't know why I watch so many of them because you don't really ever get anything from them. I'm always looking for some sort of nugget for the show. And then you get through like a 15-minute press conference and you're like, I didn't learn anything there.
No,
I already
it's-
knew all of that.
yeah.
I even, when I interviewed Lanning at, we were down there for that Duck Media Day show, I even preempted some of my questions with I know what you're going to answer. And he responded with, all right, what's my answer going to be? And then I told him what his answer was going to be, and he was like, yeah, that was about right. Because this is before we knew about the move to the Big Ten, and it was like all that news was in the air. So it's like, hey, like, is that something you're paying attention to? It's like, I know what you're going to say. So what am I going to say? Well, we're focused on what we can control and day by day, and, all this stuff will settle itself, and we trust our university. He's like, yeah, that would be my answer.
So what's the point of asking the question?
I go through that quite often when I watch press conferences. I'm just like, what is the point of any of this? Like, nothing is coming out of this.
Just to have an immediate reaction to something we watched.
Basically,
we
yeah.
need something explained to us. What happened here? Well, and the thing about Lanning is he's always honest. He'll say, like, he was asked about a specific player's play, and he's like, well, I'll have to go check the tape. Like, he's not going to memorize every second of every player's, what they did or did not do on specific downs and distances.
I mean, there is a little bit of an AI feel sometimes, and not just like I'm not trying to toss anybody like on Oregon's media. I'm trying to say in general for all press conferences in sports.
I'm
it's
glad you specified. Oregon media was going to email our boss if you didn't specify that right
You're gonna
now.
get in trouble, Schulte. You better
tune
be
in
careful.
at 6 or 7
Tread
a.m.
lightly.
I'm not
Yeah.
trying
Tread
to step on
lightly.
any toes. No, just in general, you tune into any, playoff game, whatever. Like, it's like, well, we played hard. It's like the Rasheed Wallace quote, both teams played hard, is pretty effective answer here even in 2023 to most questions. And most questions are a little drawl.
Did you find yourself regretting your hamburger purchase at what time did you purchase it? 2 a.m.?
Yeah, about 2. Yeah.
2 a.m. So, like, you could have done two things. You could have not gone there, gone home, fallen asleep, woke up, had a nice breakfast. Okay. But did you find yourself eating that burger, regretting it at all? Like, why am I doing a 2 a.m. cheeseburger right now?
Absolutely not. I was starving.
I will answer that question as somebody who ate a midnight cheeseburger. Yes, I regretted that decision.
Did you?
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
absolutely
Yeah, I
did.
appreciate that honesty.
I looked in the mirror as I was going to bed and thought, why did I just eat a cheeseburger at 12 o'clock at night? This is not a good decision to make.
Glad I had 1,000 calories to the diet.
Right before I go to sleep. That's when you really want to eat, because I've heard and read that if you eat a lot of fat food right before you go to sleep,
It burns.
you just burn it off in your sleep, man.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
If you dream hard enough
Yeah.
and your mind's working quickly enough, boom, it's like a workout.
I think that's the equivalent to Step Brothers when he's sweating on the couch saying, why are you sweating? He goes, I was watching Cops.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's kind of the equivalent.
was working hard.
I was running real hard in my dreams. Burning 1,000 calories.
Hey, can I say something too, by the way? You know what I did yesterday?
What'd you do?
Officially fulfill the promise. Promises made, promises kept.
Oh, what did we do?
Did not watch a second of Sunday Night Football.
You didn't watch a second?
Did not watch a second of that game.
Really?
And I had a big ticket on that under, which cashed, by the way.
Well, I mean.
Just horrible offenses. I already watched that game Thursday.
Yeah.
That's the same game.
It is the same game.
Bad teams, bad offenses, bad football.
Yeah.
I didn't need to go anywhere near it. I had to catch up on the because I missed the whole first half of the Washington-Utah game. So I had to go back and watch that. And by that point, I didn't have the opportunity to watch the Oregon State game yet. Not that I missed much because they kicked the you-know-what out of Stanford.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go back and see it. So I spent my Sunday evening watching those replays and then late kick. So I stayed away.
So you caught the second half of UW? I heard this
By
right?
the time we got down there, yeah, we started the show. The second half was kicking off, so we had a screen in front of us during the pregame show to watch the second half.
That's
It was spicy.
that is a
Yeah.
wild way. Of all the games that happened this weekend, that's the most wild game to watch in that order.
Yes.
Because what you saw in the second half is not at all what you saw
No.
in the first half.
No, 11-0 in the second half, 28-24 in the first half, two different halves.
28. I'm like, oh, we're going to get into the 40s and 50s here. Nope, Utah's not going to score another point. I'm like, I would have never guessed that was going to happen.
There was a couple of reminders of why I love reacting to games more so than previewing them, because nobody knows what the hell we're talking about. Nobody knows what's going to happen in any of these games. Like, if I would have told you on Friday that Oregon's main success offensively was going to be throwing the football against you, they're going to throw for 400-plus yards, and at times struggle to run the ball. Nobody saw that coming, but they did. I know the numbers were fine at the end of the game. And just like Utah and Washington, I think last week when I said I like Utah to cover the 9-point spread, it was because they're going to run the ball and play defense. They're going to control the clock. They're going to keep Washington off the field. And here comes 70-yard touchdown after 70-yard touchdown, just like we all saw coming. Nobody knows what the hell's going to happen.
What are we previewing today?
Blazers game?
A terrible Monday Night Football game?
Blazers play tomorrow.
Oh,
Hey, Utah
okay.
tomorrow.
Thank God. I don't have to subject myself to that this
What
evening.
is Monday night? Oh, it's Broncos-Bills.
Broncos and Bills.
I think the Broncos can hang with them.
We're on a really rough stretch of primetime games right now.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a really rough time of picking games. Like, no, we're not.
No, we're not. I'm on a decent little streak, but we finally get a reprieve next Monday because you got Chiefs and Eagles on Monday Night Football next week.
Did you feel like Bills Bengals kind of let down, though, a week ago?
Yes,
I kind
did.
of felt like it was a bit of a letdown.
It got off to an unbelievable start, and then it just kind of
Died.
fizzled.
Just died,
And I'm
yeah.
okay with defensive games, but this week we get Bengals and Ravens Thursday night,
Mm.
so it's a prop up. I like that. The Sunday night game still sucks. It's Vikings and Broncos. Why is Denver allowed to play in multiple primetime games? Like, just get them out. Vikings I'm okay with. They got an astronaut at quarterback.
Pastronaut.
And then Eagles and Chiefs. So at least Thursday and Monday are good this week. The rest of the primetime slate this week is just horrible.
Yeah, I just want good games, and I think
Yes.
it's going to be funny. We look back on the Ravens schedule and see 6 games and go, they should have not lost any 6 of those games.
No, they very easily could be
Just like
undefeated.
this year, they have 3 losses that
Yeah.
make 0 sense.
Yes,
should have won
yesterday's-
those games.
No sense to lose that game at all.
None.
No.
Cleveland sucks. Their offense is terrible. Their quarterback's awful, and yeah, there they are turning the ball over and allowing Cleveland to score and then win. Like, what are we doing?
I don't know if I've ever said this before, but I actually feel for NFL schedule makers for Monday night this week because I'm sure they looked at the schedule at the beginning of the season like, oh, yeah, Broncos, Bills, middle of the year. It's going to be great. Now they're giving Sean Payton the middle finger. Like, you made us look like
What
idiots.
about last year with the Broncos suggested at all they should be on prime
It wasn't,
time?
no, it was.
nothing
This was
at
all
all.
Sean
Nothing.
Payton.
Nothing at all.
We all
agreed.
reacted to Sean Payton,
Damn right.
and we regret it right now. Even though I think they can actually hang with the Bills.
Yeah, I'll watch that game tonight. I'll keep an eye on that.
Hey, I mean, sometimes it's like Broncos country, let's hide, or Broncos country, let's ride. I don't know what one we're going to get tonight, but
Could get a shootout because Denver's really bad defensively, and Buffalo's been having their issues lately. So
Yeah.
hopefully we get a little bit of offense. Give me something, a couple of tutties.
well, we got a good show today. Pate State's going to stop by at 7:30. He's going to Corvallis.
He is. It's big time news. Our listeners are very excited about that. Before we even sent out our announcement, we had listeners tweeting us saying Pate's coming to Corvallis.
He's the only show that appears to want to go to Corvallis because game day's not. They're going to James Madison for the 3rd time in 10 years. They haven't been to Corvallis once in 13 years.
No, they have not. And good for Pate, too, because he has not been a big fan favorite amongst Husky and Beaver fans this season. They have not been very
Pate
fond
State?
of they have not been very fond of Pate
God,
State.
Get over it. What, because of his JP poll?
Yes, they're very offended by that.
It's literally a made-up poll that he uses for his show, and people react as if it's like the final college football playoff poll.
This is how it's going to end. Did you not know that? If you're in the top 4, that means you're guaranteed a spot in the college football playoff.
Let me guess, it's another group of fans that's mad because he's high on Oregon. Is that, God, just
Yep.
get over yourself.
What is wrong with you? You bother me.
I bet I do.
Your dad's a Beaver. You've called your dad everything else except college football for some reason.
That is the one thing I
I
think
think you hit it on the head there, Schulte.
Yeah,
Where did you start rooting for him? 08, 09?
Hit it on the head there.
That was the one thing I took.
2010, Schulte storming Reeser.
Woo!
I got a lighter, guys!
I think he's the one that lit the field
I bet
on
he
fire.
is the guy who lit the
I
field
need
on
an
fire.
investigation.
No, but it is the one sad thing I took from my no longer stepdad is that Duck fandom, but that's a big part of my life. So there you go.
Based on what you've said on air, you love your dad, you're not fond of your ex-stepdad,
But I love my Ducks, baby.
and you stole your stepdad who you don't like's team and spurned your dad who you do love.
yeah, season tickets. It is.
Are you
easy
in
to-
therapy? Because you could sit down for an hour on a couch, I think.
I could many hours, many.
Yeah, I think you could. Let's get it going. We'll start with local taste. What do we make of the weekend? Dirt and Sprague, good to be with you. We start next on The Fan. And if you're home at the office, you want to sneak a peek at my wicked stash, day 5, youtube.com/1080 The Fan.
It's looking good. I like it. It's coming in thick.
Increasingly bothering my family by
Thick
day.
and bushy. I like it.
It's a little red, too.
I did make sure to zoom the camera in. Not on the stash, but just you got to get a view. You gotta get
Well, it's,
close up. I did close up over there.
It's blonde, reddish brown. I don't know how to classify the color here. It's a very awkward.
That sucks.
Yeah, thank you.
That sucks.
I deal with the same thing. I'm not trying to insult you. I'm trying to say it sucks when you cannot grow.
Sound like my daughter. That thing sucks, Dad. Shave it off your face.
Wasn't trying to come across that way, but all right, whatever. It's good.
Dirt, what did you make of the local schools this weekend? The 4 Pacific Northwest schools. I wrote some things down, very quick little blurbs of each team and each performance. You want me to run down this list with you?
Sure, give me your blurbs. I want your blurbs.
I'm curious if you agree with this.
Okay.
Let's start with the obvious. Wazoo. What the F?
Just downfall.
What the
Tailspin.
F, dude?
I don't know what happened. That's bad.
When he gets fired, because he should be, he's an awful coach. We're going to find out some hard truths. And maybe the NIL clip was kind of the telling part of this of he got wind of players being, tempted away with the portal money or whatnot. But God, if I would have told you after Oregon State lost at Washington State,
38-35, they were up 21 going into the fourth quarter of that game.
If I would have told you on Monday's show, because remember the emotions some of us had on that game. On Monday's show, I would have said Oregon State's better than them, Dirt, and Washington State won't win a game the rest of the season.
They might not. They got Colorado at home on Friday night.
Colorado's coming close.
They're playing better football.
They could have beaten Arizona. They threw some opportunities away, but they're competing at least.
You got Colorado at home, and then obviously the Apple Cup in
You're
Seattle.
not beating Washington.
And you're not winning that
That's
game.
not happening.
So you got a shot to get to 5. If you don't win this Friday, that would end the season on an 8-game losing streak. And I don't know.
You would have laughed me out of the studio, wouldn't you? You're like, get out of here. You're bitter. You're a Beaver fan. Like, stop.
It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. Not that Washington State isn't winning the conference or going to a playoff. Like, nobody ever thought that. But when they were 4-0 with wins over Wisconsin and Oregon State, I want to say a month into the season, they were the only team in the country that had 2 wins over ranked teams because Wisconsin was ranked and Oregon State was ranked. They were like the only one that had that resume. And just to not win a game again, Again, it's one thing to lose to Oregon or to lose the Apple Cup or to lose to some of these better teams. Utah beats you. It's another thing to get embarrassed in some of your matchups. And then, like this weekend, they fell into a 14-0 hole like that.
Yes.
They gave a scoop and score fumble, which is a weird kind of no-call thing. And then you give up an easy touchdown. It's just like, all right, here we go. We've lost 5 in a row. Now we're down 14-0 in the first quarter. At least give them credit for fighting back. But dear God, man, I don't know what the hell happened there.
They won't be there, I think, with overall wins. But if they don't beat Colorado, it's going to be really wild to say out loud, Washington State's the worst team in the conference.
Yeah, because right now...
You lost at home to Stanford. I would pick Arizona State to beat you.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe they beat Colorado and they'll, break this losing streak. But it is
them and Colorado are the only teams that are one win in the Pac-12.
What the F was
Colorado's 1-6
1-6
and Wazoo's 1-6. Stanford's 2-6. Arizona State's 2-5, and that was Cal's second Pac-12 win.
Oregon State, I just wrote a true top 10 showing. That's kind of all I wanted was what they did on Saturday.
Dude, didn't fart around at all, man.
No.
Right out of the gate. You knew 7 minutes into that game that this thing is over. Stanford can't hang. You're going to suffocate them defensively. They can't stop Damian Martinez. Second to last home game. They blew out a bad team the way you're supposed to.
UW, I wrote tough. I thought that was a tough win for them. Like, I thought they played, especially the second half defensively. They were physical, man. Like, I know Utah's down to their third string quarterback who's kind of their second string, even though he was relegated back to third, but came back as a second. But, Utah was doing some things in that first half that made you think, hey, Utah can win this game.
They were up 28-24. They had 28 points at halftime.
Felt a little uncomfortable, I think, if you were a Washington fan going into the half. But, man, that defense didn't allow anything in the second half. I thought that was a tough performance by UW.
Yeah, they just keep I think the way that I would sum up Washington is find a way. Like, their fans are so interested right now in where they're ranked and who has Oregon in a power ranking ahead of them and what people are saying about 2 weeks from now. None of that matters, man. Just keep finding ways to win games. At the end of the season, if you're undefeated and you win the conference, it doesn't matter if you beat Utah by 7 or if you beat them by 28. None of that matters. The way that they played defensively in the second half was really impressive.
I think the one thing, too, about that is just the idea of going undefeated in conference play, like they've got a mighty big test this weekend in Corvallis, Oregon, USA. I'll be down there for that one.
Yeah, I would say this is the second toughest game on their schedule.
Then they have Wazoo, and then if they take care of that business, Pac-12 title game, here you are. And yes, you'll have Oregon rematch if Oregon takes care of their business. But to just get through the regular season undefeated, if they get to that point, like, I know we've nitpicked the Huskies in some of these weeks with Stanford, ASU, whatnot, but there's a simple hell of a display of football and just kind of team aspect of getting through that regular season undefeated, and how rare it is, especially in this conference. No team has gone undefeated in conference play.
9-0 in the Pac-12 has never been done.
And they have an opportunity to do something and break history in that way. And so, yeah, they haven't looked maybe as good as, for some people, Oregon, but if they can get through 12-0, like, there's an element of that I'm just like, yeah, I have no criticism. You did something that nobody else has done ever.
At this point, with teams in the top 7 or 8, you're just nitpicking. You're trying to find, like, if there is a weakness, what is going to be the thing that causes you to not reach your ultimate goal? Because Washington's one of the best teams in the country, and nobody doubts it. So when you find ways to criticize them, it's just about, if there is an issue that will rear its ugly head at the wrong time, what could it possibly be? I will say, though, 9-0 has never been done. Good luck this weekend. Good luck.
That line opened 2.5. By the time I tweeted it on our show page,
it was already swung around.
It went to 1.
Yeah, I'm so glad Oregon's not playing in Corvallis this year. I am so glad that game is at odds.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of it. And lastly, Oregon, I wrote fast. Just everything. Fast. Franklin, 80 yards. Boom, touchdown. Defense flying around. Like, I just wrote fast. That was my takeaway.
I would use the word finish. I did not like the way that they finished, both the first half and the second half. That game was very close in the third quarter to teetering on the brink of a blowout, and then you looked up and you're like, why is this a 9-point game? Like, what happened here? This was 36-14 with 13 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and it should have gone the other direction. And so that left it was one of those wins that leaves a bit of a sour taste in your mouth, because it felt like they had a chance again to kind of send one of those messages with a blowout win, and they were a play here or a play there away from doing it. But again, this is nitpicky, right? You just if I would have told you at the start of the year.
I think it's nitpicky.
Of course
really
it is.
Do,
like,
yeah.
if I would have told anybody at the start of the year, like, hey, you're only going to beat USC by 9, you're going to be disappointed by that, I'd laugh at you, right? Like, of course I'm not going to be disappointed by that.
Is Duck fan disappointed today, you think?
I was a little disappointed on Saturday.
Really?
It's the standard. You got to play to the standard, Sprague. You didn't play to the standard.
I think you're too nitpicky.
I mean, even Evan Williams after the game said that, I think, maybe style points were lost. Could have had some of those, but it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't really in effect at the end of the game for you. It was definitely frustrating because I think you were like 2 miscues away in the first half from having 2 more scores. Dude. And it should have been like, 40 to like 10 going into halftime.
Guys, you can't win 40-10 every single weekend.
You technically can.
Well, it's okay.
It's just very hard to do it.
All right. Well, I guess.
Well, no, here, the only counter
we
argument.
just talked about nitpicking with Washington.
Let me nitpick, damn it.
Let me step in here.
Let me nitpick, okay? I'm kicking the door down. Like, that game, that being an 8-point game at halftime, that grinded my gears. That had no business being a one-possession game at halftime.
Why?
Because the reason
they're not the worst team in college football.
No, I'm not saying that they are. I'm just saying the reason it was a one-possession game was because you did things to harm yourself.
Yeah.
And that's really frustrating.
And just the flow of the game for Oregon, especially in the first half, it really felt like in the second quarter, Oregon should be up by a lot more, and they just weren't.
My takeaway at halftime was that if you looked at just the numbers, the stats, you're like, hey, Bo Nix has got almost 300 yards and tuds. You've got Bucky Irving running like a maniac. If you just looked at the stats, my takeaway was, I'm surprised there's not more points on this scoreboard.
And it's only a one-possession game.
Yeah.
So now you're nitpicking. Why are you nitpicking?
I'm not nitpicking.
See, here's the reason we nitpick.
Like, I think their numbers looked like they had 50 points. They had like 20-something. So that's all I'm saying.
What happened in the Washington game?
The Oregon-Washington game?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, which element of it?
Did your numbers look like, if you just looked at the box score, would you have thought you won that game or Oregon won that game?
Yes.
See, and that's why you bring this up, is because you had a very similar game where you were clearly the better team. Nobody doubted that at all, and you had chances to blow that thing open. Statistically speaking, you blew them out. You held them below almost all their averages. Like, the way the defense played, I thought lend itself to be a blowout kind of performance, and the offense just didn't finish it. But those kind of games are dangerous when you allow teams to hang around, especially good teams. Like, you're going to find a way to lose eventually. It bit them earlier this year, and I think that's why there's criticism.
We'll hold this for the top of the hour, but a little bit of local taste from the 4 schools this weekend. Washington State can't stop losing. Oregon State blows out Stanford. Oregon takes care of USC, and Washington beats Utah in Seattle. Coming up next, the game of the weekend for most people in college football and the craziness surrounding it. That's next, but first, Schulte with the sports update.
Now, from the Spirit Mountain Casino Sports Desk, a Sports Center update on 1080 The Fan.
This update brought to you by Vulcan Design and Construction. Check out their award-winning outdoor living designs or schedule your free design consultation at vulcandc.com. First on the Fan, the Seahawks surviving the Washington Commanders with a last-second field goal from Jason Myers, 29-26 the final. Seahawks now 6-3, tied with the San Francisco 49ers atop the NFC West. Week 10 of the NFL wrapping up with Monday Night Football as the Bills host the Denver Broncos. Buffalo a 7-point favorite. Kickoff 5:15 on ESPN. Your Portland Trailblazers not able to get it done against the LeBron-less Lakers in Los Angeles last night. 116-110 the final. Jeremy Grant leading the way for Rip City with 23. Anthony Davis, though, going off with 30. Portland off tonight before facing the Jazz in Salt Lake City for an in-season tournament game tomorrow. Big news in college football. Yesterday, Texas A&M firing head coach Jim Fisher amid a 45-25 record through 6 seasons. The Aggies going to pay Fisher a record $76 million+ buyout. And breaking this morning, Mississippi State firing head coach Zach Arnett after going 4-6 this season. He took over after the death of Mike Leach last December. And in baseball, the Astros finding a new manager, promoting bench coach Joe Espada. He had been with the club since 2018. More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. I'm Schulte from the Spirit Mountain Casino Sports Desk. Get in the game at Spirit Mountain Casino. Watch and wager on all the pro and college action. Learn more at spiritmountain.com.
Do it every morning. Dirt and Sprague. Weekdays 6
from time to time, and I want you to nearly double them and imagine you lose that way. You know a team's not going to throw the ball. You know it every time, and it doesn't matter because Michigan ran 32 straight times on Penn State and dominated the Nittany Lions. Do not allow that final score to make you think that game was close. It wasn't. It wasn't at all, and I wish we could gamble legally on sports on an app because I would have cleaned house on Michigan minus the 4. They dominated Penn State this weekend.
They did. Once you had the Aller fumble on the opening drive of the second half, it was a 14-9 game at the half, and he fumbled at about midfield as Penn State was trying to move the football, which did not happen very often throughout the course of that game. That was basically it. Michigan scored a touchdown on that drive, and you're like, all right, this game's over. Penn State doesn't have the offense to dig out of this, and they didn't end up scoring another touchdown until very late in the game. They had opportunities early, got inside the 5-yard line early on in that game, had to settle for a field goal. They couldn't score a touchdown. That was one of the most inept offensive performances that I think I have ever seen from a major college football program. They could not throw the ball. Drew Aller was supposed to be their savior. He was 10 of 22 for 70 yards. He averaged 3 yards of completion. He had that fumble that I talked about. He was awful, and it is probably the most embarrassing way that you could lose to a team. And I know this because Oregon did it to Oregon State, or Oregon State did it to Oregon last year when they ran the ball 19 straight times, and it's demoralizing. There's nothing that you can do. That was a Jimmy Garoppolo performance. They did not throw the football in the second half. They attempted 2 passes. Both of them were pass interference calls.
They don't count.
So they didn't count. He was 7 of 8 for 60 yards.
Yeah.
Like, get
Jimmy G.
Dear God.
Get him out of the Heisman race, by the way.
First off,
he's gone.
Can we also, yes, he's eliminated. Also,
doing?
get out of here with Michigan, dude. That team's going to get waxed in the playoff. Waxed.
Really?
I hope they have to play Georgia in the first round, and I can't wait for Georgia to just kick their teeth in again. Here we go again, 3rd year in a row. Michigan's great. Oh, what a dominant team. Yeah, how'd that game against TCU go last year? How'd the game against Georgia go 2 years ago? Michigan is not in that same caliber, in my opinion, and I think this weekend proved it. To beat Penn State, who can't move the ball offensively. Like, get out of here. Nice to finally play a team, though, in Week 10. I'm glad you finally played a team with a pulse.
You don't think Michigan could beat, like, Florida State?
Maybe Florida State, but I don't know if that would be the matchup.
Okay.
But they're not beating Georgia. They're not beating Alabama. I don't know if they beat Washington. I don't think they would beat Oregon.
Are they going to beat Ohio State?
I don't know.
I think that's going to be a good game.
I think it's going to be another horrible, low-scoring defensive battle with bad offense.
I'm slamming the under of that game because I think McCord's going to be terrible, and I think Corum's going to run at like 2.7 a clip, and somehow they're going to win like 6-3.
You don't have the ability to run like this on Ohio State's defense. You just don't.
No. Well, they've done it in the past, but I don't think they'll be able to do it this year with this specific group.
Helps when you know what the defense is calling.
Well,
this year they won't know what the defense is calling.
What's a funny transformation, I think, on this show within the span of a year is I've been kind of one to call out Harbaugh in Michigan. Dirt's usually pretty quick to defend Harbaugh because he's a Harbaugh guy. But Dirt, you seem done with him. You seem done with the Harbaugh Michigan thing. I'm with you on the playoff performances. Like, you can't have back-to-back performances where you show up and then you don't show up for the actual game itself.
You also can't have a schedule where you play nobody until November 12th or 11th. Like, that's a joke.
And despite thinking Michigan was going to do what they did to Penn State, Dirt, I found myself watching this game actually getting upset, actually getting mad that Michigan's first real test of the year.
Yes, is with 2 weeks to go.
Was November 11th.
Yeah.
Like,
it's an embarrassment.
How does a schedule like that get granted? I know some of this isn't their fault that the Big Ten is so got GD bad that, like, they play Indiana and Indiana stands 0 chance.
Yeah.
But as a fan of a 2-loss team who wishes they had just 1 or no losses, it sucks to know that some teams actually have real schedules and other teams somehow fly right by.
So what bothers me most about the sport, that everybody's allowed to play by different rules, and it doesn't matter who you play. I've always used the Washington example the year that they made the playoff. Everybody made fun of their non-conference schedule and called it cupcakes, but at the end of the season, what happened? They didn't lose to one of those SEC teams in week 1. They went undefeated, had the one stumble late in the year against USC, and they made the college football playoff. Like, there was no reason to play anybody. And this is what drives me nuts about the current format. We reward crap like this. And it's why I'm anti-Michigan. It's not a Harbaugh thing. Like, whatever. He cheated. They blatantly cheated. I think they're kind of coming together and backing themselves into a corner and going us versus the world mentality is making me angrier and angrier and angrier. Like, they're the victim here.
Me too.
Like, how dare you come at, like, You cheated.
Bet.
Yeah, bet. Tom Brady.
Bet.
I love how he tweeted that. Yeah, he should know how to cheat too because he won 2 Super Bowls cheating early in his career. I can't stand this crap anymore. I found myself rooting for Penn State. You know how dirty that feels to root for Penn State? I was rooting for Penn State on Saturday, and I could never forgive Michigan for making me do that.
It's the only program I will never root for. I always root against. I don't care. I can suspend it. Their interim coach, Sharon Moore, is their offensive coordinator. Schultz pulled this post-game cut. This is Sharon Moore, the OC of Michigan, interviewed on the field after beating Penn State.
I want to thank the Lord. I want to thank Coach Harbaugh. Love you, man. Love the shit out of you, man. This is for you. For this university.
All right,
the
Pete,
president,
Jim.
our AD. We got the best players, best university, best alumni in the country. Love you guys. These guys right here, man. These guys did it. Man. It's all to him, man. Love you.
So he clearly didn't know he was on live television, or he just doesn't care. And
I mean, they don't care about rules at Michigan anymore.
well, it's interesting here because I want to get some coaching stuff here. But like, what's interesting to me is he gets suspended on the plane. His injunction isn't filed because of the holiday, and so he gets to miss this game, but be in Penn, College Station, or not College Station, whatever the Penn
State
is.
College.
State College, thank you. I always get them and College Station mixed up in my head.
Beaver Stadium and State College. It's very confusing.
Isn't there Happy Valley in there too? I feel
And
like.
I believe it's also Happy Valley. I think that's yeah,
There's
I don't know.
2 Oregon references in Penn State. It always confuses me. But it's what's funny to me is what you highlight there. Is Jim Harbaugh the only person, player, or coach that benefited from the cheating? No? So the entire team did? But they're all just out there acting, by the way, after they beat a team that's less than, acting like Harbaugh has stage 4 terminal cancer, he's about to, I just felt the whole approach was weird. This whole, bet. Because they suspended the coach without, they didn't follow precedent here, but they wanted to be aggressive, and so they were. I just find the whole thing weird. I find the Big Ten's handling of it weird. I find the Michigan stuff, like the reaction to it, as if they've been wronged, as if Connor Stallions wasn't all over that program.
They had a coach on the sideline of a game in which they were not playing, using sunglasses with a camera to film the other sideline.
Bet.
Like, that happened.
Bet.
Like, that's where, I get the whole, how did the Big Ten handle this correctly, and maybe they acted too, we've never seen this before.
Michigan needs to come over to the Pac-2. Michigan, Oregon State, Washington
That's the funniest
State.
thing out of all this is we might leave the Big Ten. You're not going anywhere.
What if they did,
Shut up and sit down.
What if they did?
The only conference they would leave for is the SEC because financially they're not going to take the hit. They don't have the balls to go play Alabama, Georgia, Texas every year. They don't have the balls. They get the benefit of this schedule where you get to play Minnesota and Iowa and Nebraska and Indiana and Northwestern. They're not running away from that. They're going to be pulling in $70 million a school to beat up on cupcakes in 9 out of 10 of their conference games, and they're going to go to the SEC. Get out of here with that garbage.
I think it's one thing to win your first game as an interim coach at Penn State and say, that's what's overwhelming me. Very awkward, Harbaugh got you that emotional, huh? He did it to you, huh?
R.I.P., man. Great guy, great coach. Thanks for what he did for the 49ers.
Did you see Blake Corum's nose?
Sad he's died so soon.
He got jacked up early in that game. He had a big old gash on his face.
How's his corporation doing with Connor Stallions, the one that he didn't know about, that his John Hancock was on all those documents?
I had no idea that Connor Stallions is part of my LLC.
Yeah, he forged my signature to start an LLC. I've never heard of this guy. I've never, who's Connor Stallions? I have no clue. Bet.
I don't know if I can root for Penn State, but I wouldn't be mad if Ohio, or not Penn State, Ohio State. I can't root for Ohio State, but I wouldn't be upset if Ohio State beat Michigan this year.
Dude, this is the equivalent.
But I also think they're fraudulent. I don't think they're in.
I think their defense is legit. Their offense isn't very good, and that's kind of how I feel about Michigan. I think Michigan has a really good defense. I don't trust their offense against a good.
Nor should you.
Dude, their offense did not look good this weekend. That was a 14-9 game early in the third quarter.
Coming up next, it didn't age well, Bob. It didn't age well. Next on The Fan.
The Herd with Colin Cowherd.
stop and had his little Junction Boys tour. This is ridiculous.
Junction
Was it a tour? They went on like all through America? The Junction Boys.
Yeah, guys.
Singing
By
and
the way,
dancing included.
yeah, this is when not giving water was popular in the 40s and a method of training. But no, seriously, so this is why, because he stopped there before his prominence at Alabama? Because he won.
Oh, you're not.
So many conference titles in the SEC. In fact, I don't know, go back to like the Southwestern Conference. Oh, when did you win one? Like 98? When you won a conference title last? Because Kevin Sumlin led you to greatness? What in the hell are you doing in College Station? Oh, excuse me. I forgot about Johnny Manziel's Heisman. Yeah, they should be top 5 every year. This is freaking ridiculous. Anyways, sorry. I digress. We're good.
So you don't think that's a good job?
I don't think Texas A&M is as prominent of a program.
Well, those are different things,
That's a
right?
very
So
different
those are
thing.
different arguments.
Yeah.
You're not wrong that it doesn't have a good history. It's not a prominent program in that regard. But if you're like looking for what makes a college job good,
Money.
right? Like support, NIL money, boosters, facilities. Like A&M
They got
checks
it all.
every box. A&M is like if Arizona State had money. Arizona State doesn't have money, but everybody always says Arizona State's a sleeping giant.
Yes.
Because there's hot chicks down there, and who wouldn't want to go be in Tempe? They don't have money, though. Their stadium is crumbling. Their facilities are terrible. Like, there's no history, nor is there any money, which is why Arizona State, not a sleeping giant. A&M is a sleeping giant. They have just, like, dude, how many bad coaching hires can you make in a row? Kevin Sumlin was that was their hire. And without Johnny Manziel, that dude gets fired 3 years earlier. He couldn't hack it in the SEC. And Jimbo Fisher, like, we saw this at the end of the Florida State run. Things ended terrible. It wasn't like he won a national title. They said, here's $100 million. Now come coach us.
Yeah.
He won a national title, and then he sucked for like 3 years after they lost in that playoff game.
Yep.
And then they gave him $100 million. They just need to make the right hire there.
I'll shut up with this point, though. I hear you. That's a good point. You're right. They are a sleeping giant. However, at this point, from the quotes that I've read the last 2 days, it sounds like their president, or interim president, excuse me, because they're in a little flux there. Their interim president and AD think that they are an Alabama-type school. And
I mean,
that, at this point, is just not the case.
Schultze, I think you can make a real argument they are, but they haven't nailed the hire. And look, will they do it again? I certainly wouldn't put it past them if
They're
you're
going
willing.
to give somebody a crazy amount of money. Man.
Well, that's the thing about this, man, is like whether it's Dan Lanning or Mike Elko or whoever the hell you want to fill in the blanks here, because the list is long. If they want to pay the person to be there, they're probably going to get that person because they are going to pay $80 million for Jimbo to go away. Probably have to pay another 10 to 20, depending on who they go after for a buyout, and then give on an annual basis that person probably $9 to $11 million a year on like a 5-year deal.
Depending on who they get, it might be more than that. Because if you're hiring somebody away to go into that cesspool currently, you're going to probably have to get north of 10, I would say. Like, you're going to have to make that whoever you go get one of the highest paid coaches in the sport.
I had somebody in East Coast who loves college football and asked who if you could tell Texas A&M who to hire. And I'm being genuinely honest here. It would be your guy.
Sure.
But I don't think he's going to go because to me, it doesn't make sense right now. But money doesn't always, it's not about making sense with money. No pun intended there. Sometimes the money's dumb. But like, I don't see it personally with Dan Lanning.
No, I don't either. I will say, like, a PSA to Duck fans, don't do the he's never going to leave thing
And
again.
that's the other thing I'd add to
stop.
it. I saw this, like, it's hard for me to believe. You just lived through this two
Yes.
different times, like in the last 5 years. What do you mean this is hard for you to see?
I mean, the Taggart one, he was a snake oil salesman.
Sure.
Like, that was one, he had bounced around from job to job to job to job to job. The Mario one was the one where it's like, well, did you see what he said at his press conference, though? He needs to be dragged out of the facilities. Like, that was the argument that we made. And he's never going to leave because he said that, and we gave him his opportunity and voted him the interim coach and then gave him the full-time job. He wouldn't spurn us 4 years later, would he? Yes, he would. This is college football. So don't do the Dan Lanning's not going anywhere shtick because we have no clue how this is going to turn out.
We don't.
That
no.
being said, I also don't see it. Oregon has everything that they need to win. He's off to an unbelievable start. If they win this weekend, there was a crazy stat I saw. If they win this weekend, that's 10 wins for Lanning in Oregon. back-to-back 10-win seasons to open his tenure there because they won 10 last year. You know how many 10-win seasons Texas A&M has since like 1998? 2. That stat just blew me away of like, Jesus, in 2 years at Oregon, he's had as many 10-win seasons as they've had.
Since 98, you
Since
said?
like 1998. It's insane how
I think
bad
that's
that
less than Oregon State.
It might be, dude.
I think Oregon State had more than that.
It's insane how bad that program's been. They're going to get the hire, or they're not going to, but they're going to throw money at somebody and they're going to try and win. He wouldn't be my first name, though. Like, you're already selling your soul with what you're doing. You're paying somebody $75 million to not work anymore.
I know where you're going. I don't like it.
Urban Meyer is my first call and the only call that I'm making. I'm offering that guy $15 million a year to come down here and win. I don't care if he's here for 3 years, if he's here for 5 years, if he's here for 2 years. He's going to win because he's won everywhere he's been. He, too, has sold his soul to the devil and has quit multiple jobs after, like, letting assistant coaches beat the crap out of their wives. That is the dude you go get because he will win.
Top candidates: Mike Elko, Duke; Dan Lanning, Oregon; Lane Train at Ole Miss; Norvell at Florida State; Jeff Traylor at UTSA; Cliff Kingsbury, a coordinator analyst at SC.
That.
And
they're gonna.
there's
go that
no way
too.
that's a real.
No way.
That's not a real possibility. And then Glenn Schumann, who I'm going to guess is the D coordinator at Georgia. I'm just guessing. I don't know their coaching staff, and I'm sorry. I don't think it's close. I think Lanning's the best name of that list. But again, I'm not dismissing that it won't happen. I kind of think right now he's hitting a stride at Oregon, and I think Oregon can give him a slight pay bump, make everybody happy. A&M moves on. We did have a couple people remember Jeff Tarpley, who we had on from Gig'em 24/7 when we did the Dirty Poll in 2022.
Last year's Dirty Poll.
So bear that in mind, given they just fired Jimbo Fisher at A&M. Take a listen to Jeff Tarpley's view of Jimbo going into last season.
You're talking about a 10-2 team that's probably going to be playing in New Year's Six Bowl. Probably no worse than number 3 in the SEC. Last year, Ole Miss was the third best team in the SEC. They played in the New Year's Six Bowl. So that's probably if they can keep enough people healthy, then that's probably your floor.
That's your floor. That's your floor.
The floor is the New Year's Six Bowl, third in the SEC.
They went 5-7 last year. This year they're 6-4. The ironic part about the timing too was that did anybody even see what they did this weekend?
Oh, they kicked ass.
They beat Mississippi State 51-10.
Like,
another program that fired their coach.
So they had to put in the statement.
See, the bigger takeaway that I have, we don't have a lot of time here, but the bigger takeaway that I had on this was what the ramifications mean. Like, if Lanning doesn't go, which I don't think he will, what it means for these other programs, dude. There are vultures circling that roster right now of NIL offers like that. They had the number 1 recruiting class in the history of recruiting 2 years ago. There's a lot of talent on that roster, and coaches are going to go poach as much of it as they can.
It was always a coaching problem to me. It wasn't a talent problem.
Never was.
Jimbo's a fraud. $80 million. What a life. What a world.
Yeah, they had to lead up in the statement saying, well, we made this decision on Thursday night after a 4-hour-long conversation.
And then they won by 50, and they're like, yeah, we're going to fire you. I'm sorry, Jimbo. Good win, though.
Not one 10-win season.
That's unreal. Hour number 2, Ducks take care of the Trojans. Huskies beat Utah. Josh Pate at 7:30. Oregon State houses Stanford. We're allowed to get to second hour of the show. Dirt and Sprague on the Fan. and youtube.com/1080 The Fan. If you missed the first hour of the show, I can't believe it's already flown by, but you can catch it at the Service Patriots podcast at 1080thefan.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Mondays always go way too quick.
They do.
Way too quick.
Check out the latest special offers for listeners at servicepatriots.com/thefan. You can also reach us at the Vancouver Ford text line, 503-864-6326. They treat you right before, during, and after the sale. For more information, you can find it at vancouverford.com. Josh Pate's going to hop on at the bottom of the hour. Pate State's going to Corvallis, Oregon, USA. Game day of ESPN is not, despite there being a top 10 matchup. They're going to head to James Madison, who's unranked and is not bowl eligible. But, man, what a story. What a story.
They made that decision for one reason and one reason only. They knew exactly what was waiting for them in Corvallis, and they wanted no part of it.
So you really buy that, don't you?
I 100% do.
Because I did too, but I couldn't tell how biased I was thinking this.
That is 100. Like, dude, these people understand the noise. And if you've been anywhere near social media for the last, 3 months, how do Beaver fans feel about ESPN this year? Their announcers have called them the Ducks on multiple occasions. Yesterday, you sent me a snippet of a recap of their game against Stanford in which they said the Ducks win by whatever margin was their biggest win.
Their 45-point win earlier this year.
The Ducks conference win this weekend against Stanford at home looked really good. You know, those Oregon State Ducks or those Oregon Beavers I'm a big, big fan of. Like, dude, you guys hate ESPN, and I don't blame you at all for feeling the emotions you feel. They knew exactly how that crowd was going to react to them being on campus. They don't want to touch on the dirty topics. This has been their thing all season long. There's two teams in the Power 5 who are getting left behind. They're getting left behind because the TV networks don't want to pay for them to be in a Power 5 conference. That's how this works, and so they chose the easy way out.
Yeah, Kirk Herbstreit responded to somebody basically saying, why would you not choose this game? This is the best game of the weekend. Herbstreit basically said, I'm going to be there calling the game on ABC.
I imagine he's not thrilled, dude. You know how far away James Madison is from Oregon State? It's about as far away as you can get. He's going to have to hop on a private jet to get all the way.
Yes.
Like, that's a long day, dude.
He will be getting off that bird in Corvallis and probably heading straight to the stadium with like an hour and a half to 2 hours left before game time.
Yes, he's going to be miserable. I would imagine if you asked him, would you rather do the show in Corvallis, hang in Corvallis and watch football all day, and then call the game? He would say, yes, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Well, I was going to get to the Ducks, but now you've already sidetracked it here. Let's just get into it. If this was the SEC or a Big Ten matchup where these are two top 10 teams and they will be top 10 when the playoff rankings are released tomorrow.
I think it already is in the AP, right?
It's already in the AP, but the one that counts is the playoff ranking, and Ole Miss loss and Penn State loss. So you got two teams that are getting bounced. Louisville won, and so did Oregon State. So naturally they get slotted up. This is a top 10 matchup. ESPN would not make this decision if this was the SEC, the Big 12, or the Big 10.
No.
Maybe even the ACC. I could see if you told me like Florida State Clemson's a top 10 matchup at Florida State with this same stuff.
Yeah, they're there.
They're there. And I'm with you. I think this is a whole lot of cowardice. You don't want to face the music of a decision you made, which, by the way, still continues to be a very weird decision to me. Because no matter how you feel about Washington State and Oregon State, whether they're players with some of the big dogs or not, of all of the restructuring, all of the realignment, of all of those teams, only two got told no. Not in the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, the ACC. Of all of the teams involved in the realignment, two were told no, you're out. And for reasons that are basically geography and eyeballs, because the network's been terrible, and so Oregon State, Washington State play games on those networks and don't get a lot of eyeballs.
Yes.
But I did see this, which was really funny, and it was, kind of a prototypical Beard tweet, but I think it's funny. You need to win more games. Oregon State, okay, they win more games. You need to have more fans at games. This year, with their stadium opening, 103% stadium capacity for the season. You need more TV viewers. Their fourth highest viewership in the Pac-12. So, like, every criteria thing that somebody's thrown at an Oregon State fan, checked it right off, Dirt. I'm with you. It's cowardice. They know this is wrong. James Madison's a great story, but I saw a Beaver fan make a good point. This will be the third time they've been at James Madison in 10 years. They've only been to Corvallis once, and it was only because the Ducks needed to win that game to go to the title, and they haven't been back since.
So Pat McAfee shouldn't be too happy about that one, right? He should be kind of slamming them all weekend. James Madison, I mean, like, what are we doing here? Like, by his attitude that he's, his like holier than thou, nobody cares about small schools. If he's excited at all about James Madison this weekend, I'm gonna flip a lid. Sorry, I'm a little punchy this morning. I'm running on like 3 hours of sleep.
Everybody's fired up today. I love somebody texting. This is an angry version of Dirt and Sprague. And I don't think we're that angry. We're just fired up, man. We're passionate.
Well, I kind of was. I thought this was a no-brainer.
It's a chicken ass move, dude. It is chicken ass. That's the only way you can label it.
Dirt, I text an Oregon State representative because I was asking for a media parking pass for this weekend's game.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, "Are you going to cover?" And I was like, "I'll be honest with you, no. I want to go to the game. I'd like a close spot." And so I was texting with them about this and basically said, "Hey, you're going to have to go to overfill because ESPN." And I said, "Oh, have they told you game day's there?" And they said, "No, but we'll find out Saturday, either evening or night is usually when they announce it. They usually let the schools involved know, like, hey, we didn't choose you."
Right.
They had prepared it. This was not an Oregon State thing. Oregon State was doing everything they could to roll out the red carpet and welcome ESPN. Despite everything ESPN has helped do to that university, Oregon State was on the other side going, "Hey, we're going to give you everything you need." And they didn't get him. So, like, it's you mentioned McAfee, Schultze. I'm not saying this is a McAfee decision. I don't think it is. But I certainly don't know how excited he is, despite being a wrestling heel professionally. I don't know how excited he'd be to come to a place that he basically kind of helped call out with the Washington State stuff, because I don't know how he would have been received at Oregon State.
Not very well. And again, that's why they made this decision. Instead of looking at it as an opportunity to let's showcase, which is ironic to even say, because ESPN has the purse string and the power to change all of this in a heartbeat if they want to. They're choosing not to. But instead of choosing like, hey, last home conference game for Oregon State this year, the last one in the Pac-12. This is going to be a game that you remember forever. Like, this is, I don't know what the future is going to hold. I don't know what things look like 5 years from now. This will be a game that you tell people, especially if Oregon State wins, this has an opportunity to be one of the biggest games in the history of that program. And you had a chance as a network to come in and shine the light on that. Look at this 10-win team from a year ago. Look at how good, like, they are 2 losses by a combined 6 total points away from being undefeated at this point in the season. They're one of the rising programs that nobody wants to play, especially when they're at home. Like, the fact that they don't have a home next year is an embarrassment to the sport, and it's an absolute joke. And you had the chance to come in and shine the light on that, and they chose not to. Instead, they chose to go to James Madison, as you point out, for the 3rd time. I will say, and I don't want to just toot his own horn because he's coming on, I'm genuinely a P1 of Pate's show. I think he does a really good job breaking down and talking about college football in a way that's not clickbaity. It's not Deion Sanders ball gargling. It's like informative and entertaining, and I appreciate it. The theme, if you don't watch his show, is the theme of his Saturday tour is Once Upon a Saturday. And the theme that started before the year began was he wanted that to be the theme because this is the last year of college football as we know it. And there's not a better game to go to this weekend to sum up the Once Upon a Saturday tour than this one, where you have a team that's going to be ranked in the top 10 who still doesn't have a schedule, nor do they have a conference for next year. They don't know where they're going. They don't know who they're playing, but here they are at 8-2. And if they win this weekend, guess what? It sets up a winner-take-all, not winner-take-all because you still got to go win the conference title, but the winner of Oregon State and Oregon would go to the Pac-10 or Pac-12 championship. Like, that's what's on the line in the next 2 weeks, and this team somehow doesn't have a home. I don't mean this disrespectfully at all to Washington State, because Washington State has a proud fan base. But the way that they have fallen off has not helped their argument. They've lost 5 straight games. Program seems to be in a little bit of disarray. You're not sure about the coach.
6
straight games. Thank you. Like, that's a different storyline. This is a team who last year won 10 games, beat Florida in a bowl game. Now they're on the brink of winning 9, maybe having a chance at 10 again if they win this weekend. Like, Oregon State's in a good spot, and this is one of the more egregious injustices that I've seen in sports in a long time, and shame on ESPN for cowering away from highlighting that.
Oregon takes care of USC at home. We'll talk about that next. Josh Pate at 7:30. Dirt and Sprague back with more on The Fan.
Oregon Ducks football is
shoes.
Going to do that again? Okay. We'll see how that works out in the NFL, but that's besides the point. He had some plays that just made your jaw drop to the floor. When you asked me to take away from the game, there's a lot of frustrations, there's a lot of critiques, penalties, offense not finishing drives, yada, yada, yada. Let's start with a positive. I thought that was maybe the best defensive performance we've seen in the Dan Lanning era. They were incredible in my mind. When you go look at the 2 touchdowns that USC scored in the first half, it was trick plays and miracles. And those are going to happen when you play Caleb Williams. He had a throw to set up that first off on that opening touchdown drive that they had. Not opening, but the first one that they scored. He first had a hook shot pass.
That was unreal.
He had a hook. He was going out of bounds.
Literally a sky hook.
He threw a hook shot in a football game, and it was like a 12-yard gain for a first down. Okay? He had another one after a sack on like 2nd and 19 in which I was standing like 20 feet from it. He is running for his life towards the Oregon sideline. Somehow throws a ball across his body. If the ball is 2 feet to the left, it gets picked off. If the ball is 2 feet to the right, it goes out of bounds.
Where'd he put it?
And it was just boom. All right, there you go. Dorian Singer, here's a 40-yard completion. Like, how? I was standing there watching him like, oh, we're going to get him again. We're going to get him again. And it was a 40-yard completion. Like, that's what it took for USC to score early in that game. When you look at the numbers going into the fourth quarter, I made sure to write these down when I went back and rewatched it. You know what he was going into the fourth quarter? 12 of 21 for 169 yards. Like, their defense was outstanding. Now, they got a little loose with coverage in the fourth and started playing some shell cover too. Let's not get beat deep, missing some tackles. But the way that they played defensively to get after him and make his life miserable and make him at times look human, I was inspired by, and I thought that was the biggest takeaway.
There's an ape in Hawaii that we saw at the Oahu Zoo or the Waikiki Zoo, and they have this big thing on their neck, and they make these calls. It's how they communicate, and when they communicate, the neck thing pops up, and it looks like an air bubble. It's really trippy to see in person, but they're very loud when they make the noise. He had 5 plays in this game. All alone in my living room, I'm making the same noise. He did that hook shot. I saw it in real time, and I'm like, what?
Did he really just do that?
A hook shot pass on the run, by the way. It wasn't just like, oh, here. It was let me run full speed away from the defense and let me just hook it over my head. It did feel like watching. It felt like Oregon versus Caleb Williams. How is this going to go? The defense didn't exist for USC. Troy Franklin, Tez Johnson, they made a joke of that defense. Bucky Irving ran all over it. Bo Nix had no problems at all. It really felt like just trotting one guy into Autzen Stadium and saying, how many points can you score on this team?
See what you can do.
And we'll see what you can do. I know what you said earlier about it, being a little tighter a margin and not as big a blowout. I get it. But we talked about this last week, man. He is a special player, and special players make special plays. You cannot prepare a couple of those improvisations. You cannot prepare for. There's nobody in that program and on that team that can run scout and say, I'm going to be Caleb Williams, and you're ready for it. But I thought they did a great job, to your point, maintaining it, not allowing him to overcome them as a defense and maybe dictate the energy in that building. The offense never had any problems at all, but I thought Lanning highlighted the biggest thing, at least for me. I thought the kick coverage on Branch was excellent. And that might not be the biggest deal to everybody. It could be defensive line, cornerbacks, even though both their cornerbacks got hurt in Florence and Jackson. It could be Bo Nix. It could be Franklin. I don't know who you'd pick. But I really thought underrated part of that game was their punt and kickoff team coverage, because Zachariah Branch at any given play can bust one and change kind of the momentum of things. And it felt like they caused him to do more bad for his team than good. He had losses on some of these kickoffs, and I thought that was the most underrated part of Oregon, was taking away maybe the second biggest weapon for USC in Zachariah Branch.
Yeah, it's fair. I don't disagree with it. They had one of the worst personal foul penalties I've seen in my years of watching football on Terrence Ferguson after his touchdown. And I was standing right down in that end zone. And he tapped his chest, pointed to the sky. They gave him a 15-yard personal foul penalty. I don't know if there was any explanation why he got that. I didn't see anything when I went back and rewatched the game about anything that was said. But what that does is it then forces you to make that kickoff to Branch from 15 yards back, where usually you can boot it into the end zone. And I thought that was the play that he highlighted and was unbelievable because they forced him to run back to kick it on the left.
Yep.
He then tried to take it all the way to the other side of the field, and they covered it perfectly and pinned USC inside the 15-yard line. With all these critics, like, look, this stuff is nitpicky. There's no doubt. I had no issues with what Oregon did defensively all night. You mentioned the injuries at corner. They played a little softer coverage up big in the fourth quarter. USC took advantage of that. Until that point, though, defensively, I thought they were dominant. Caleb is going to happen from time to time.
Right.
When you get beat on some of those plays, you just say, all right, like, literally nothing you can do. If he's going to throw a hook shot, there's nothing you can do. Before the PI call that I thought was the other one that just was an absolute turning point in that game, it was 36-14 with 13 minutes to go. If they don't throw that flag, which was a horrible flag on fourth down because that was a hope and a prayer throw, it was two guys tangling and you throw a flag on that. It's just awful. You're on the 31-yard line going in with a 36-14 lead.
Mm-hmm.
And you're probably going to score on that drive. You can make it a 40-13 game, right? Like at that point, you can blow the game open, and there's a much different feeling of it. The reason, though, why some of this stuff is critical and nitpicky is you don't have the benefit that Florida State or Washington has in terms of being undefeated. You don't. Like, you're in the mix right now with other one-loss teams when it comes to the college football playoff race. And I know most of this stuff will settle itself, but Alabama's playing great, and they're starting to climb up.
Well, they're in the SEC championship
game.
Yes,
that's guaranteed.
clinched.
They're going to play Georgia. Texas, they got to win. Another bad second half, similar to what Oregon
came back.
They did. They were up big, and TCU came back for the second straight
Florida
week.
State struggled to put away Miami.
But Florida State's undefeated, so Oregon's not going to jump ahead of them. They're undefeated. If they win out, they're in. Washington is undefeated. You can eke out as many wins as you want. You're not going to be ranked ahead of them. It's just not going to happen until you find a way, if you get the chance, to beat them. The only criticisms that I had, honestly, were offensively for them. They didn't run the football as efficiently as I thought that they would. Maybe some of that was the change at D coordinator. And then there was the little stuff of like 2-point conversions, and then you chased it, and now it's 19-7 instead of 21-7. And then you had the drive at the end of the half where you had the chance to score a fourth touchdown. The penalties derailed it. You had to settle for a field goal. You had opportunities late in the second half to kind of put the game on ice and just say, all right, it's over. And again, penalties kind of stalled you out offensively at times. There was a lot of those weird, funky plays. They had Troy Franklin fall down when it would have caught an easy touchdown pass. You had Jackson Powers Johnson throw a ground ball snap late in that game.
I thought he had the worst night of
anybody.
What are we
doing? You just couldn't get the snap off the ground. There was just they fumbled an exchange inside their own 5-yard line.
Yeah, and Jordan James are lucky he saw it and fell on the ball because that would have changed everything if USC recovered.
So these are the things that I think you're critical of because you say if you play a team that's more complete, that's like if you do that stuff against Oregon State, you're going to lose. If you do that stuff against a rematch against Washington, you could lose. So there's a reason you're critical. Love the way the defense played. Offensively, I didn't like the way that they finished, but again, you're nitpicking a 9-point win over USC.
Let's talk to Josh Pate, what he makes of the conference, the game day decision, the coaching moves, all of it. Josh Pate is next for the Daily Ticker, but first, Schultze with the sports update.
Now, from the Spirit Mountain Casino Sports Desk, a Sports Center update on 1080 The Fan.
This update brought to you by Toro Mexican Kitchen. Transport yourself to Baja, Mexico with delicious regional dishes and cocktails. Book your table today at ToroPDX.com. First on the Fan, the Seahawks surviving the Washington Commanders on a last-second field goal, 29-26 the final. Seahawks now 6-3, tied with the San Francisco 49ers atop the NFC West. Week 10 of the NFL wrapping up with Monday Night Football. You got the Bills hosting the Denver Broncos. Buffalo, a 7-point favorite. Kickoff set for 5:15 on ESPN. Your Trailblazers not able to get it done against the LeBron Lakers in Los Angeles last night. Final 116-110. Jeremy Grant leading the way for Rip City, 23 points, but Anthony Davis going off for LA with 30. Portland off tonight before facing the Jazz in Salt Lake City tomorrow. And big news out of college football, of course, yesterday Texas A&M firing head coach Jimbo Fisher. After 6 seasons and a 45-25 record, they're going to agree to pay him a $76+ million buyout. That's a record for any coach of a public institution. And breaking this morning, Mississippi State firing head coach Zach Arnett after going 4-6 this year. Arnett taking over after the death of Mike Leach last September. More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. I'm Schultze from the Spirit Mountain Casino Sports Desk. Get in the game at Spirit Mountain Casino. Watch and wager on all the pro and college action. Learn more at spiritmountain.com.
Tired of getting dinged by subscriptions? We won't send you a bill.
How'd you do that? Actually, I'm not even mad. It's amazing.
The Daily Ticker with Dirt and Sprague on 1080 The Fan.
All right, Daily Ticker time here on a Monday, and boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to react to from the weekend and some big stuff to get to in the week ahead. Joining us now is our good friend of the program, Josh Pate, the commissioner of college football. Late Kick Live on YouTube, the Late Kick podcast, at Late Kick Josh on Twitter. And he is a man who was not afraid to face the crowds in Corvallis, Oregon, unlike some major networks out there. Josh, was it an easy decision, tough decision? You're heading to Corvallis, Oregon this weekend.
Yeah, I thought it was an easy decision. I mean, I'm looking at it wondering whether we're going to have to be limited because sideline space is going to be dedicated to other networks showing up. Then all of a sudden I'm told, hey, not going to be an issue. No one else is coming up there. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll take that easy PR win. So, yes, we will be up there with bells on.
You have been controversial to some in the Pacific Northwest with the JP poll. You always explain it, but people still get fired up when they see the graphic. I'm curious, you're going to be in Corvallis. Oregon State, obviously a much different team when they play at home versus the road. But Washington, I think, Josh, has something that's kind of a weakness for Oregon State. How do you see this matchup going this weekend?
Yeah, look, the JP poll is controversial. My mom hates it. So everyone thinks it's controversial. So that's fine. So here's what I'm interested in. Could you, in 20 seconds, explain to me what you think that exposure possibility is? Because maybe we align on this.
No, yeah, for sure. Just from watching Oregon State home road splits, they've had to replace some secondary guys, and they've also been banged up throughout the season. I think Oregon State can definitely beat Washington at home, but I think Washington has the ability to go in there and take care of business because I think that's kind of the weakness and the pass rush. Chatfield's been great for the Beavers, but that Husky offensive line was really good for Penix against Utah. If he gets any time, I think he can pick them apart.
So that's kind of where my head's at. And I'm going to do a deeper dive on that game tomorrow when we break it down on our show. But I think, sometimes you can harness pass rush combined with good DB play and sort of play off of a home crowd, which obviously goes into a lot of home road split. And if Oregon State can do that, it doesn't take a sustained effort over 4 quarters. It takes spots. It takes disruptive spots and moments. Those moments turn games. In a game where we score in 3s and 7s, they turn games. And so, I do not have any illusion, for example, that I'm looking at Washington held under, 16 points going into the 4th quarter. Maybe it happens. I don't expect that. What I do think you have to have is you have to have some guys play the game of the year for you. You have to be disruptive. You have to sort of crowbar the bicycle spoke, which I've spoken about on this program before, where you have facets of your approach that it sort of stunned them a little bit. It's like a cattle prod to the neck. If you can do that and disrupt enough and keep them from getting into the mid-upper 30s or beyond, yeah, that game is yours for the taking. Even though Utah didn't score a point on them in the second half, they can be scored on. They can be scored on. Home crowd's got to do their job.
And they have all year for Oregon State. We'll see if they can do it again this weekend. It's going to be an awesome atmosphere. The final home game of the Pac-12 era for Oregon State. We're talking with Josh Pate, the commissioner, at Late Kick Josh on Twitter. Catch the show on YouTube, and the podcast is everywhere. I felt like you kind of called me out on the show last night, Pate. I'm watching. I'm a P1. I enjoy the show. And you're going through Florida State and Washington and some of these teams who are struggling to win games late in the year. And you're like, this is new for them. They're trying to, you got to figure this out. You're climbing to the top of the mountain. And I'm watching Oregon's game on Saturday night, and I'm getting a little nitpicky here of why haven't you separated? Why is this a 1-possession game at halftime? I love the way you play defensively, but the penalties and some miscues. Am I being nitpicky to be not over the moon of a 9-point win for Oregon over USC?
No, look, we have the kind of relationship where we can dole out tough love. I think everyone knows that. And so, yes, you are. Okay, you need to calm down a little bit.
Thank you, Josh.
You just need to cool it about 5 or 10 miles an hour. And here's what I tried to say, and I try and reiterate this time of year as much as I can. Alabama is not playing close games in November as much because they've been there before and they're ultra-talented. Georgia just demolished Ole Miss the other day because they've been there before and they know when to hit the gas. Clemson under Dabo got that way, where they'd look average at best in October, and you'd start saying they're no playoff team. Well, then in November, it's like, what happened to Clemson? This looks like a different team. That's not by accident. But these teams like Florida State or even Oregon or Washington, these teams that have never breathed this air, find out November is such a long month in college football. I know it looks like 4 weeks on the calendar just like any other month. It's not. It feels like an eternity. and you are climbing and you're breathing that thin air, and your body's never had a chance to acclimate to it like the other guys, like Alabama and Georgia, who look like they're totally at ease, just taking apart teams that would have pushed them to the brink a month ago. And that's the way it is. So Washington beats Utah by a touchdown. Oregon doesn't pull away from USC to the tune of people's liking. FSU has to have a fourth quarter score to beat Miami, and folks are like, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. The things that happen in Tuscaloosa and Athens are the exception to the rule. You're witnessing the rule. This is what contenders look like most of the time in our sport in November. You're taking everyone's best shot. You're banged up. The air's thin. It's a 100-foot tightrope walk, and no one wants to fall, and you're really tight sometimes.
Yeah, Josh, that was a nice way of calling him soft. I appreciate you doing that. I tried to do that earlier and tell him to shut up. They won by 9. Like, there was never a doubt that they were beating that USC team. We got to ask about the college thing with Jimbo at A&M. I think that surprised some people that they decided to pay the $75 to $80 million for Jimbo to go away. I know this is very early on, but if I gave Josh Pate an ear from like the lead donator or whoever at Texas A&M, who does Josh Pate lean in and go, I think you should go after this guy?
Well, I mean, I'd go after Lanning, but I'd go after Kirby Smart too. I'd go after anyone if I don't have a limit on me. I'm not getting Kirby Smart. I have doubts as to how serious that whole Lanning thing would be. And so if I'm looking at a list of realistic candidates, I'd go get Mike Norvell. Problem is, last time they went to Florida State to get a head coach, it didn't turn out so well. So maybe that well is soured a little bit. I'll tell you one, though, that I keep getting thrown back to me by agents and some coaches, and that's Glenn Schumann over there at Georgia, who is the coordinator that got elevated when Lanning left. Schumann's worked at Bama. He's worked at Georgia, and that's it. Those are the only ways he knows. He is from North Dallas, I believe, and which is not being talked about right now. He's 33, though, so he's a very young coach. He's a coordinator. He's never been a head coach. I don't know if they want to roll the dice like that. And frankly, you don't have to roll the dice on an unproven commodity if you can spend like A&M can spend. But it was really interesting when I was doing some digging on that yesterday. The assumption out there is if you're paying a guy $77 million to go away, it must have been a bunch of booster money that was raised. And that is not what they did. They are paying that thing out of the athletic fund, which is obviously filled by booster money, but it's not like they passed the hat around in the last week. And so I say that to say, this is not going to be a search that is beholden to the whims of mega boosters. They are going to do the due diligence. I know who they're working with. They're working with the right firms, and I think they'll get a quality candidate in there. That is a top-tier job. It is not a top-tier program. There's a difference between the two. It's a top-tier job because everything that's needed to win championships is there. Instead of hiring smarts and days, they've hired Sumlins and Fishers, and that's what makes the difference between a good job and a good program.
You mentioned something there, too, about with the way teams are playing late in the season. And I think one thing that we've had out here on the West Coast is a semblance of hope, right? There's some years where you go in and, you look at that 2019 LSU team and you're like, all right, nobody's beating these guys. It's just not going to happen. They're too talented and we can't even hang. Even if we make the playoff, it's a great accomplishment, but you're not going to win once you get there. There's been a semblance of hope out here. And now I'm looking at Georgia and the way that they're playing late in the season, just thinking like, is this a repeat? This is the third edition of the movie. Are they the best team in college football at this point?
There's not a lot of separation. And I'll tell you, I don't think that this Georgia team is on par with the last 2 years. I know they looked really good the other night. Just talking to some folks around the coaching side of the industry, including in the SEC, they looked at that performance. They looked at Alabama. They've looked at all these teams, including Michigan. And they said, these teams are really good, but there is no pull-away, runaway number one right now. There is no team where you get in the playoff, and unless they turn it over 5 times, you have no shot. That team doesn't exist this year. And so I think because of that, if an Oregon does get loose in the playoff, they can win a national title. I know it's going to be hard for people to fathom because their minds can't get off that, what was it, like 49-3 or whatever that drubbing was last year in Atlanta. That is so long ago. These are such different teams. It's not the way the sport works. And so I am very interested when we finally get these 4 in there. I'm very interested because I think, unlike years past where it feels like miracles have to happen, I think anything can happen this year.
Josh, I was kind of surprised waking up Sunday morning to see that the Heisman market had moved to Bo Nix being the favorite at -150. Penix is just a little bit behind him And then you go down a little bit, like Marvin Harrison Jr. was third, and Jaden Daniels had over 600 yards of offense this weekend. He's got 4,000 yards, 38 touchdowns. He leads the nation. If not, he's top 3 in almost every category. Is the Heisman to you, how would you vote it this year? Because to me, I think Nix is more than deserving to be in New York, but I kind of think Jaden Daniels has been the best player in college football. How do you view the Heisman race right now?
It's extremely close in my mind. I'm not one of those folks who likes to waffle week over week, but I have, because Nix has been number 1 on my board for a few weeks. This past weekend and up until today is the first time that I've said Jaden Daniels would be my number 1 vote if I had one to cast right now. And that could easily change this weekend. So that's really how close it is in my mind. I still think that this will come down to the Pac-12 championship game. Because as much as people like to say it shouldn't be attached to how quality a team you're on is, it is attached to that. And if Bo Nix goes in there and rights the wrongs against Washington, if that's who they face in the Pac-12 championship game, and he shines in doing so, if Oregon doesn't win in spite of him, I think that's going to be his award to lose. So I actually think the betting market is right on that. I would vote Daniels at the moment. He is a phenomenal player. I could put him on half a dozen teams right now and have him be favored to win a national title that aren't without him.
Last 2 things I got for you, Josh. One of them's not even a question. It's more of a comment. Like we kind of opened the show joking today about game day and them spurning Oregon State, and the Oregon State fans are not happy about that. But as a listener of your show and a watcher of your show, I think the theme of the Once Upon a Saturday tour has hit home with a lot of us out here on the West Coast because of what's happening to the conference that we love. And some places, some teams have new homes and some teams don't. What's happening to Oregon State is inexcusable that they're getting left behind. And so the theme of this is the last year of college football as we know it, being the Once Upon a Saturday tour, not finishing the year, but nearly finishing the year in Corvallis, I think is a perfect way to end it. So kudos to you for coming to Corvallis this weekend. And then the question that I have, you can just cough once or twice. Is there any chance, if it's a yes, you cough once, no, cough twice, that you're going to be at the Civil War in 2 weeks or at the Pac-12 championship game?
Which one was the one? And which one was the twice?
You can just say yes or no. I know that was confusing. You can just say yes or no.
Why can't he just say yes or no?
Because he's got to keep it under, you can't let people know where you're going. Because the whole reason I'm asking this is because I want to get my hands on one of these, Once Upon a Saturday shirts.
He wants a Pate State shirt, and he's scared to ask for a free one,
No,
Josh.
I don't want a free one. I want one that I can look fondly upon. I wanted to get the Seattle one earlier this year, but then my team lost the game, and I'm like, I can't look at that shirt in my closet for the rest of my life. It's going to bring up sad memories, so I need a happy memory T-shirt, and I'm wondering, do I just bite the bullet and get the one this weekend?
I know the folks that own the Pate State store. I happen to have an in with the owner.
Do you?
So if you just get with me off air, I'm sure we can barter our way to working something out. But to answer your question, that Pac-12 championship game is on a Friday night. I am contractually obligated to be at the SEC championship game the next day. I have perused the red-eye flights out of Vegas that night to Atlanta. I'll just say that.
Okay, I love that.
This is a sickos committee thing right now.
This is it. I love it, dude.
Josh, I appreciate you forwarding him to the department that actually handles the merch. He's been soft in this interview, and I apologize on behalf of the show.
Yeah, we're definitely sending him a pink version of the shirt, but we will send him the shirt.
I love it. You got any advice for him in Corvallis this weekend you want to give him?
Go to, if you check out a meal, if you get there with some time to kill, go to a spot called Local Boys. It's the best Hawaiian food you'll have in your life. I'm particularly fond of the number 5 order there. And if you have time, I don't think you will, but if you have time, Oregon State wins the game. There's nowhere better to be to check out the scene than the top of the cock, okay? Trust me, the top of the cock in Corvallis, it's a real place, it's a real thing, and it's not what you think in your mind by hearing that name, okay? So there you go.
Well, I don't know what in the world you claim I thought in my mind, but look, as a guy who's been around South Carolina football, this talk of top of cocks doesn't even faze me anymore.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, happy Cocktober to everybody out there. Josh Pate, you can catch the podcast anywhere you find your podcast. The show is on YouTube, at Late Kick Josh on Twitter. Go give him a follow and check out the store because he's going to have a sweet shirt with the Corvallis, Oregon logo on the back there, Once Upon a Saturday, and give him a follow on Instagram as well for some behind-the-scenes info. We always appreciate the time, Josh. Thanks, man. Enjoy Corvallis this weekend, and hopefully we can catch up again soon.
I appreciate it, guys.
There you go. Josh Pate of Late Kick Live. He's
You
gonna
went
be in
way
Corvallis.
long just to get a free T-shirt. Look at that.
I really want one of those T-shirts, dude.
We can
It's
tell.
a sweet T-shirt.
We can tell.
Have you seen the shirts? They're
I haven't seen
awesome.
I haven't seen this week's yet.
Okay, so he does a special one for every week that he goes,
right.
and it has the city and the date on the back of it.
You want a Corvallis one?
Well, this is why I was asking if he's going to be at the Civil War. I would get that one because it would say Eugene, Oregon, Autzen Stadium, or the Pac-12 title game.
He's not coming to Oregon.
I don't think he
straight
is.
weeks.
No, he's not. I know he's not. But if
Just
he's
ask for an Oregon one.
if he goes to the Pac-12 title game, I can get that one because then if my team wins, if we get there, there's a lot still to figure out. All right, well let's we went a little long there. We'll have a couple more thoughts on the weekend of college football. Move on to some NFL stuff in the final hour. Back after this on the Fan.
Ducks Game Day Secret Score.
buy into if Washington gets to the Pac-12 title game with one loss or better,
Okay.
and Oregon wins this weekend and wins the next weekend, I think the winner of the Pac-12 title game at quarterback wins the Heisman Trophy.
It certainly feels that way according to the odds makers.
Like who else? Jane Daniels' argument is great. His numbers are unbelievable, but as a 4-loss team, I just don't see it.
Well, they're a 3-loss
team.
Yeah, he got knocked out of one of those losses. Like I think ultimately, if he doesn't get hurt against Alabama and they can pull that upset, I'm not sure we're having a conversation.
He probably would have won the award.
But I kind of think that speaks to the ridiculousness of the award. It very well, I've been saying this the whole time, Nix and Penix are in New York. Like, book your tickets, book the hotel. It's a done deal. There's nothing that's going to happen. Penix could have an awful game this weekend. He's still going to be in New York at the bare minimum. And I understand why some Duck fans don't appreciate the commentary on this, but, like, you can't agree on everything about Oregon. Jaden Daniels is having a historical season. And if we're just going to turn this into best quarterback on best team thing, then let's just call it what it is. Whereas I thought this was supposed to be best player in college football. Nobody's having a better year than Jane Daniels.
I mean, it hasn't been that award for a long time. That's a tough part. There's been a lot of years. Like the one that I will point to.
Devonta Smith won the award.
Sure, that's an outlier.
Unbelievable.
I would point to, I think this example is the Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry example. Christian McCaffrey was on a 2-3-loss team. He was better in literally every metric than Derrick Henry.
Historical season.
And Derrick Henry won the Heisman Trophy. Why?
Because Alabama went undefeated.
And they were in the national championship game.
Right.
But Christian McCaffrey played on the West Coast, night games, didn't get as much attention. They kind of flew under the radar because they weren't undefeated all year.
Yeah.
He was better than him in almost every statistical category.
When you look at the stats of this, right?
Jane Daniels is nuts, dude. He's nuts. I'll say that
he's in top 3 of like everything.
Everything,
it's unreal.
I think I agreed with your Knicks take more 2 weeks ago than I have the last. I think his numbers and the way he's played the last 2 weeks has been more Heisman worthy. As opposed to where he was maybe 3 weeks ago, where it was like, dude, they're dominant on the ground. He's playing great. But I agreed with the take of like, yeah, that doesn't scream Heisman to me. I think what he's done the last 2 weeks, though, has vaulted him up, and that's why the Vegas markets have him where they're at.
You nitpicked Oregon's win. I'm nitpicking some of this stuff.
Oh, for sure.
We're talking about the best of the best doing this. But, like, if I was to nitpick, I think in Eugene, the reason I don't see the Knicks thing, and I agree with what you just said, the last 2 weeks statistically are insane. And, like, again, he's going to be in New York, if not win the award.
The yak helped on Saturday night.
Well, yeah, you throw a 15-yard pass that goes 88 yards. It's
a lot of yak.
Lot of yak. Lot of yak.
Where's the yak woman when you need her?
I just feel like there's such a complete team. And, again, I don't mean to make that sound like I'm punishing Bo Nix, but Bucky's awesome. The offensive line, like somebody did a poll question last week, who's been the MVP, and the offensive line was an option, and it was 4th. And I'm like, okay, like none of this matters if that group's not good. Franklin's put himself in the best receiver in the conference category, and the defense is nationally elite. I look at LSU and I go, well, Jaden Daniels doesn't have 600 yards and
very fair
4 touchdowns. They're probably a 5-loss team this year, maybe a 6-loss team. I'm trying to go off best stats, best season. And when I went through the numbers last night, like Nix is certainly in there for passing percentage, completion percentage, but every other category is Jane Daniels or Jane Daniels close. And I know he's 9-1, which tells you he's probably a super big long shot to win it, and you should just gamble on Nix and Penix.
Yeah.
This is going to kind of be maybe your example's right there. I'm just always in my life going to think Jane Daniels was the best player in college football this season, even though he's going to be the guy that maybe doesn't get the award.
The tough part, too, that goes into this whole argument, then we'll go, is that when you're on a lesser team, you got to do more. Like, that's the other aspect of this.
Well, he is doing. I mean,
well, I know. I'm saying
more.
How many games have like Nix and Penix, for example, sat in the fourth quarter, especially early on in the year, where you're just not needing them and you're bringing in your backup because you're up by 30. LSU hasn't had a lot of games like that. They played Army a couple of weeks ago, but every other conference game has been relatively close for them, and so they've needed him down the stretch, and it's just going to give you more of an opportunity.
Real quick, there's a guy that Chris Felica of Fox retweeted, the tailgate tent. He dove into some metrics about the Heisman. He gave like a big thread on this. I'd highly advise to go read it because he gives you the classifications and stats that people thrive in to win this award traditionally. Nix is not at the top of most of these. And he basically finishes saying he doesn't think Bo Nix is the best player in college football this year based on the metrics in the past voting. But it certainly doesn't mean he's not going to win the award. And I think it's just an interesting look of, I think it's a big conversation. mostly this time every year, we know who the Heisman winner is.
Yeah, this year you don't.
It could be 3 or 4 different guys, and I don't know if it really is, but I just think it's a fascinating one. I don't care about the award as much as I used to, but the possibility of a Duck winning it again, just a short time after Mariota, and a Husky winning it for the first time, or a Jaden Daniels doing it when nobody out here who watched him at ASU thought this was going to happen. I just find it a very interesting conversation.
Listener point at the Vancouver Vortex line, then we'll go. It's unfortunately been this way for a long time. Troy Smith, Chris Winkie, Jason White, Eric Crouch. Like a lot of times it's just quarterback best team, and that's the winner of the award.
The Crouch one was egregious.
That was horrible. All right, we got a lot to get to in the final hour of the show. I got some NFL thoughts. We haven't talked much NFL yet from this weekend. Are the Texans for real? Hello, 49ers. Some final thoughts on the college football weekend. We'll dive a little bit more into the UW-Utah game. Lots to get to in the final hour. Don't go anywhere. Dirt and Sprague on 1080 The Fan.
Your home. Your safe.
the Odyssey app, and live. You are looking live at my balding head on YouTube. Make sure while you're there, you go subscribe to 1080 The Fan. We're at 939 subscribers. Let's go, people.
What happened after we got off the air on Friday? Nobody else picked up the slack?
Nobody else did. We're the only ones carrying weight around here. My back's hurting. We have eight likes on the show so far. So, that's awesome. And a moment ago...
What does that mean, by the way?
You can like the video as you're watching it. There's like a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Oh, like a daily likes thing?
Like a daily
okay,
like.
okay.
Yes, we have 8 likes on the show today.
Only 8.
And there was a moment ago, we lost 1, but a moment ago, we had 69 viewers during the commercial break.
That's pretty nice.
Now it's 68.
Oh,
now we're back to 69. Nice.
See, I saw during the break before Pate, it was at like 80, and I'm like, okay, great, here we go.
Things are going
Hanging
good.
out with us this morning.
People are in and out, man. So watch the show on YouTube if you can. We love all of you, no matter how you consume the show. Utah and Washington is a game we have not talked much about, and I would like to start the final hour there.
I'm starting to slowly be honest with everybody here. I kind of hate Mondays at this point.
I'm too overwhelmed. There's too much.
There's so much football and so much going on. Like I just don't feel like we get to enough of it.
There's so much more meat on the bone of the Oregon State storylines going into this weekend, the game day stuff. We kind of just touched the surface of Oregon and their win over USC, which at the start of the year felt like the biggest game on their entire schedule. And now it's like, an afterthought, you won by 9, let's move on. Utah, I liked Utah's ability to cover the spread this weekend because I thought it was going to be kind of ugly, low-scoring, rainy, run the ball, milk the clock. Was not the case at all. Could not have been more wrong on that. And at halftime of that game, I'm kind of following it on my phone on my drive down. I was trying to find it on the radio, but I couldn't find it anywhere. And I get down, watching the second half, I'm thinking to myself, I can't wait to come in and trash Washington's defense on Monday. I can't. With 28 in the first half to Utah? You kidding me? Pig farmers torching ya? What's happening in Seattle? And then they shut him out in the second half, and he was like 3 of 14 and threw a pick, and they had a safety, and it's like, damn it, no, I can't criticize. Really great performance from their defense, man. I mean, that was embarrassing in the first half, getting torched like that. Utah's not that good of an offense, but the way that they made adjustments and shut them down, it won them the game in the second half.
It certainly did, and you give them a ton of credit as a group. I'm also not going to say it's embarrassing to give up 28 to Utah. That we know what that defense is. It's those two halves, right? That defense at times, we saw it against Oregon, for whatever reason, at times they can just step up and make a play. And mostly throughout the rest of the game, they have the ability to also give up big plays, big runs, big passes, etc., which is what you saw in the first half. I thought that game summed up their defense perfectly.
Like, this is exactly who they are.
It's exactly who they are. They're in between what the first half was and what the second half was. They're certainly not the second half, and I don't think they're as bad as the first half. They're in between that. What's funny about that is the blurb you just dropped there. We have to talk about how a kid thinks it's okay to drop the football at the 3-yard line. How does any athlete ever? Deshaun Jackson, you name it. Yeah. Kalen Clay. I don't know how players drop the football before they cross the line. And I forget the kid's name who made the pick. It was a sensational play by him, and it would have iced the game in the moment. But what he should be thankful for in that game and post game and today, his defense, like the first play of that recovered fumble, caused that safety. Because if they don't get that stop and Utah goes down and scores, that kid is living in hell for a week.
All-timer.
And I still think he's got a lot of egg on his face, but I just don't know how any athlete, how do you have any awareness at all to drop the football at the 3-yard line? How can you not tell? Yeah. And then, oh, by the way, I saw it in real time. How did you follow your teammate to the end zone and see him drop the ball and just go to dance with him?
We were watching it together doing the pregame show because we had a little screen for the second half of the game. We were all yelling at each other that he dropped the ball early.
I did too. I'm like, it's a live ball.
And they're just showing him celebrate. We're like, who's got the football? Did anybody pick up the football? We're like yelling at the screen.
Dirk Benetti did it. Benetti was like, and I think that's a live, I think it's a live ball. And they're still on him. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, that's a live ball. And a Utah player got it.
That one wasn't even close, too. Like, some of them you're like, ooh, that was like maybe an inch too early or a half a. That was like the 3-yard line.
It really was the 3 when he started to let go of the ball to drop it. I don't. And I loved, by the way, the broadcast. I know we're not really talking about the game, but the broadcast had the line of, he's never really been in the position to return it to the house. And I'm like, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Why do you drop the ball until I don't, if I'm I'm trying to think. I've never
I'd punt
scored a
the ball into
touchdown.
the stands is what I would do. I'm
No,
dropping the ball
I
at
would
the
hold
one.
that ball until I run to the back of the end zone. There's no
hand it to the official.
Yeah, even still, it's like there's no inclination of letting that ball go until I'm 5 yards plus deep into the paint. I just can't even imagine the thought process going through your head.
There's two things in
staring at a girl already, dude. Damn.
There's two things in football I'm just blown away by. One is absolutely that play still happens, and the second is that receivers have still not been taught, for whatever stupid reason, in college especially, always come back to play the football because the DB is almost always never turned around, and you would just have incidental contact, and you would get the benefit of the flag. Those are two things that I'm just like, how are we not taught these things to not exist anymore?
It was, to have that moment, then you get the safety and the immediate aftermath of it. So you end up getting, it turns into a positive play to a certain extent.
Well, that was the game. It
really felt like 33 to 28 at the time. That would have been, 40 to 28, right, if the pick six stands. Instead, then you get the safety. It's 35-28. But then you have the chance to ice the game with 1:30 left, and they block the field goal. And so all of a sudden, now you got to get another stop. It was a roller coaster. I can't even imagine what Washington fans are going through in those moments because, again, you're up by 12. The game's up. Like, Utah's not throwing their way back into that game in the second half. Instead, the safety allows them to kind of hang around. Then they block the field goal. There's still a shot. Can I just give a PSA to quarterbacks out there listening, which there probably are not many, but there is nothing that bothers me more than having no timeouts. Like, this is a do-or-die situation. Game is essentially on the line, and you're throwing checkdowns with no timeouts. Like, there's nothing. Like, throw the ball into triple coverage for all I care. Dinking and dunking 2-yard passes like Utah did on that last drive. I know Barnes is limited. Like, they had a 4th and 10, and he threw a check down to a running back out of the, just throw it up.
I know.
Maybe you get a PI. Maybe a guy makes a play. Like, maybe something. You have no chance in converting that. It drives me nuts when quarterbacks do that.
And I certainly want to give Dylan Johnson a lot of credit. He did again to Utah what he did to Oregon. He got over 100 yards, which makes a massive difference when a team is so pass happy the way Washington is. That being said, and again, I am not trying to indicate at all the outcome is different. Questionable moment in this game at the end there, and Kyle Whittingham and the broadcast, including Brock Heward, former Husky, all kind of saying the same thing as I was at home. How do you call offensive pass interference on Utah there at the end? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about.
Late in that game, they had a play where they caught the out, they got the first down.
Yeah.
And they called that guy for pass interference offensive, and they showed the replay. They barely touched each other as he broke out. And the ASU flag, that kind of pickup of a flag, I just was like, what's going on in Seattle where these refs make these weird decisions? I don't know, but it was a good win for Washington. I don't care about the spread. Overall, I kind of expected a game like this.
Mm-hmm.
Utah's feisty. They're well coached. I think since that USC game, and I know Oregon just destroyed them the next week, I think for the most part, they have confidence right now, even with Barnes. And so Washington survives again and does exactly what they need to do. You have got to be ecstatic if you're a Husky fan, seeing what that defense did to Utah in the second half. 0 points after 28 in the first. I don't know who would have guessed that.
Just keep winning, man. That's all. Like, don't pay attention to polls and rankings and where your team's at or who you're. But like, if you went out, everything will take care of itself. You're in the playoff. That's all you need to focus on right now. If you're a Husky fan, that game, there's a lot. I was wrong on a lot of stuff this weekend. Like, certain games did not go the way at all that I thought they would. And while the style of this game was a little bit different than I thought, we set up we knew this could be a dogfight, man. Utah is not 35-6 worse than Oregon. Oregon just had a day where they put it all together. Their defense is a little more dominant, and they were able to kind of suck the life out of Utah as the game went on. This is when you knew it was going to be a dogfight. Utah is feisty. Kyle Whittingham's one of the best coaches in the country, and they were going to be up for the game, and it was. Turned out to be a dogfight. You made enough plays in the end to win. That's all that matters.
I know you'd rather Oregon be in a position to not be able to lose another game, and you'd rather be undefeated every time. But, there is a certain thing about being undefeated that I just commend teams that can get through it. College football especially, it's just such a weird sport this way. It's not easy, man. Like, this isn't an excuse for Washington. This is just a week in and week out. Every team you face, every single one, is aimed at you. You are the highest ranking team in your conference. You haven't lost yet. And so, should they be close games against Stanford and ASU? Probably not. Although if you're Chip Kelly, maybe.
Those are the two outliers. Like USC, Utah, whatever. Like the ASU Stanford games were the outliers of their schedule.
But again, Oregon loses to UW. It's emotional. It's heartbreaking. But in a way, you go back to the facility and you kind of go, regroup. Washington is just like, okay, you win. Hey, man, big man on campus. You win again. Hey, man, big man on campus. It's like every week there's an expectation that you can't lose. And so there is an element of getting through this. And I don't know what's going to happen this weekend in Corvallis. There's an element of just getting through it and being undefeated at this point. I tip my cap to it, man. It's got to be mentally exhausting to be 10-0, especially in a conference that's never had a team go undefeated through it.
Yeah, in the Pac-12 era, there's not been a 9-0 conference play team. A bunch of teams went undefeated in the Pac-10 era, Pac-8 era, if you go that far back. But Pac-12 era, nobody since, when did that start? 2011 was the first year. 12 so nobody's been able to go 9-0. And we'll see if Washington can do it. It's going to be their last big test. They're going to smoke Washington State in the Apple Cup. I don't really have any doubts about that. This weekend, though, cannot wait. 4:30 in Corvallis. All right, let's get to a couple of NFL notes we haven't talked about yet, including one of the bigger surprises, at least to me, of the weekend, and another one where, that's a good reminder. We'll get to those next on The Fan.
The Blazers are a
of the NFL weekend. And maybe there's one for you that outweighs both of these. But I thought the two big takeaways that I had were the questioning of, are the Houston Texans legitimate contenders? like are we there? Like that win, it shouldn't shock me, but it did to a certain extent going into Cincinnati and beating a Bengal team, which, by the way, they now have the same record as the Cincinnati Bengals at 5-4.
Mm-hmm.
Or the 49ers, who everybody left for dead after losing 3 in a row, going into Jacksonville and winning 34-3. They have now beat the Cowboys and the Jags by a combined 74-13, or what was it, 42-10, I think was the final of the Dallas game. What was the bigger storyline this weekend?
I think it's the Pasternaut going 2-0 with the Vikings, knocking Derek Carr out, and Minnesota now in their next 3 games has a real opportunity here.
See,
and
what did I say last week? They got a chance to rattle some dubs off.
Look, I wasn't sure what to expect from him. I kind of expected the opposite, and he went out there and they got off to a monster lead again, and they had to hold off the Saints with Jameis, but they did it. The impressive thing about this is Dobbs he should be winning an award this year, but he won't. And I'm telling you right now, I'm going to gamble on it after the show. Dobbs to win comeback player of the year to me is a done deal, but they still have this weird DeMar Hamlin thing that if he plays at all, they're just going to give him the award. And I don't like it. I feel like comeback player of the year is a pretty good award, and you should actually have to play most of the season.
Yeah.
He's going to go through 2 teams in 1 year and actually maybe lead one of the teams to a playoff. I'm with you, though, on Houston. It's Houston over San Francisco between your 2 teams. It's not remotely close. San Francisco doing that to Jacksonville. I know you picked them. A lot of gambling people like that game. They bludgeoned Jacksonville. And again, I will just maintain I don't trust Doug Peterson. And I think Trevor Lawrence, it's time to have a real conversation. What is Trevor Lawrence in the National Football League? That being said, Houston winning at Cincinnati, nobody saw that. Nobody. Who did?
Yeah, maybe cover the spread, but not win outright.
How many people were gambling money line Houston Texans to win that? And after that touchdown they gave them the first quarter, they dominated that football game.
They did.
Cincinnati was in comeback mode. Stroud, another rookie record of most passing yards through 2 weeks. He joins the list of Luck, of Cam Newton, historical figures at that position. And by the way, they're balanced. They can run the football with Singletary. Obviously, we know what they have weapons-wise when he's throwing the football. And defensively, I thought their pass rush did a pretty good job getting and putting pressure on Joe Burrow. They're plus 240 to make the playoffs. I know, maybe you can't trust them. They lost to the Panthers 3 weeks ago.
I mean, they're only a game behind Jacksonville, and they have a head-to-head win over Jacksonville in the division.
Do you know who's in the playoffs right now and who's not?
In the AFC?
In the AFC. Do you know who's in the playoffs and who's not?
Cleveland's definitely in now. Yep. I think Pittsburgh's probably a back-end playoff team.
Yes.
Is Cincinnati still in?
Cincinnati is out.
Yeah.
Buffalo is out.
Yeah.
The Chargers are out. The Jets are out. Like, you go through the list of teams not in it, and it's still early, but Houston's in. It's wild. I would take a flyer on him. I think they're well coached, and he's the real deal. He looks good, man, CJ Stroud.
Back-to-back weeks, man. He looks incredible. On your Jets, or on not your Jets note, but your astronaut note of Dobbs, the Pasternaut.
Yeah.
Why did you not make that trade if you're the Jets?
You could be asking that about Cleveland, too, who had
him
actually.
But at least Cleveland won this weekend, at least.
In spite of their quarterback.
I know, in spite of him, but at least they're 6-3, and they appear to be going in the right direction.
What about Pittsburgh?
Yeah, Pittsburgh, too, but I didn't watch any of that Jets game last night. Promises made, promises kept.
It wasn't fun.
It looked horrible. I'm just looking at the box score of Zach Wilson. I guess he sucked again. I'm shocked by that.
He had it was funny. There was 2 drives where he would just kind of start to get going and picks.
Yeah.
Just bad decision.
Right when you think
again.
he's figuring it
He
out.
almost ran a tutty in, but he stepped out of bounds at the 4-yard line, and it's just they didn't score a touchdown. That whole thing.
If you had a quarterback with a functioning pulse, you're the Jets' defense is legitimate. It's very good.
I don't know what was worse, Zach Wilson in the offense or Rob Saleh's beard dye job, because that thing was, man, he just did that.
I did have a little conspiracy.
That was way too dark, man.
He looks like our intern's trolley account, the picture on that. Go put those 2 pictures next to each other. What is it, Beaver Dam or Digital Dam? Put those 2 pictures next to each other, and they're identical.
He does.
So he's the next Just for Men spokesperson.
Yes, I think he is.
I good for him. I couldn't tell. I haven't really been paying attention to the beard color all year. So good for you.
I have a theory, and I'm going to throw this out to you, and it's not an NFL game theory in any way. There was a report from Sunday Night Football that you missed, Dirt, that Melissa Stark says that Rodgers told him, quote, he's aiming to be back mid-December. I'm just going to tell you right now, I don't want to talk about this, and I don't want to give any thoughts on it after what I'm saying until I actually see him on the field, because my theory is it's all bull. Why would it be all bull? Nobody likes to be talked about more than that dude. That dude saw Taylor Swift get attention and then instantly jumped and called her boyfriend Mr. Pfizer. Anytime he can get attention and be talked about, he will do it. If you really believe a guy full-on popped and snapped his Achilles in September and is going to be playing in an NFL game in December, I have beachfront property in Idaho. I'll believe it when I see it, and then I'll sell you that house if it happens. I think he only did this to be talked about for the next month and a half. That's my theory.
His career will
I'm
be
with
over.
you on that.
It's not happening, and he's only doing this to get First Take and Get Up and ESPN and all these shows to just talk about what Rodgers will mean to the Jets if he comes back in mid-December.
Last NFL thought that I have, by the way, I endorse that opinion. Last NFL thought that I have, there was a defense the last 2 weeks that got healthy. And their head coach said, this is what we are when we're healthy. We're a dangerous team. Look how dominant we could be. That healthy defense gave up 41 points and 533 yards of offense on their home field this weekend. And I will once again ask the question, if not now, when does Brandon Staley get fired? They played an offense with a, actual quarterback this weekend. They gave up 41. Herbert has had a down year this year. There's no doubting that. He's been a little disappointing. I think the finger injury is having something to do with that. I thought Romo highlighted it well on the broadcast. That was one of the best games that I have ever seen Justin Herbert play.
Pissed me off.
He was on absolute fire yesterday. Like, just even like 4 or 5 incompletions were hitting dudes on the hands, and they couldn't make catches in tight coverage. He scored 38 points, had 323 yards and 4 touchdowns, and his defense gave up 41 and they lost. What are we waiting for?
Well, it's the Spanos family, so they're probably waiting to the end of the year to save themselves like an extra $810,000
for some grocery store coupons. They need those Winco coupons, so they got to wait till February to fire him. He literally bragged the last 2 weeks. My defense is healthy. This is what we look like when we're healthy. And then you play a team with a pulse and you give up 533 total yardage and 41 points.
Joey Bosa, he recorded 1 tackle.
Yeah, he's healthy. Finally healthy.
And he had 1 tackle for loss.
Finally healthy.
Yeah.
It's like $1.5 million per tackle this season for him, isn't it? Good God.
Dude, he's been really good in his career. His brother is so much better than him.
So much better.
And,
so much better.
And here's the other part of this.
He's definitely the Jason Kelsey of that family, but it's a less successful family overall, those Bosas.
Well, that's sexiest man alive, Jason Kelsey. So why don't you correct yourself there, okay?
Damn right it is.
According to People Magazine.
Hey, if a chubby guy can win sexiest man alive, then I guess we've come a little ways in 2023.
I'm so mad at the Lions for not winning that game by 10 points or more. They were up 14 in this.
They were up early. It felt like they were going to run away with it.
I mean, you know how I feel about Herbert. I like Herbert. I didn't abandon Herbert, but in that game, F Herbert. I was so upset.
As a Lions gambler, we could tell.
As a Lions
it's a painful
gambler.
tie. It's a painful push.
It was ridiculous. They should have won this game by a touchdown or more because those were not the same teams, but Herbert was the only thing keeping the Chargers around in it. I think they're going to move on from that guy. I don't think there's anything he can accomplish outside of getting to a Super Bowl or a conference championship game that saves that job.
I hope so, man.
But it's a cheap ass ownership group. So I think that's why you're not seeing a move made, at least yet.
Really quickly, I want to get this on the record because I feel like there have just been some terrible officiating calls throughout the NFL season that have affected the outcomes of games. But specifically, and I'm not saying the Jets should have won, but Robert Saleh was trying to call a timeout, with about 19, 20 seconds left in the game of Sunday Night Football. They were at the 40, 50-yard line, would have had a shot with 20 seconds as opposed to having like 12 or 13, which is what they were left with. The refs just said F you. So I am really starting to notice in 2023 just the lapse of absolute officiating competency, and I'm starting to wonder. It's like, no, I'm not going all tinfoil hat here, but I'm like, what the hell are we doing? Are guys actually getting disciplined? Like, just seems like, all right, it happened, move on.
It's an issue, man. It's an issue in the NFL where there's not accountability on bad. Like, college is a little bit different, but first off, NFL officials should be full-time. You should have a ref that is the overseer in the booth every game. That's how you fix things. An immediate replay. He buzzes down and says that was a foul or wasn't a foul. Like, it's a very simple fix, but also you have to hold people accountable. Like, if a player makes mistakes and is not performing or throwing picks or missing tackles, he's going to get cut. And if you have a bad official week in and week out, like, there's no
They get interviewed by a pool reporter.
Yeah,
That's
just
all we
I don't
get.
know.
You get like 2 questions on those things. Burkhardt had a funny line. They had to go to commercial because they were replaying whether something was a fumble. And as they're going to commercial, Kevin Burkhardt's like, well, I guess we're going to review this, even though we just saw that it is a fumble. And then they just went to Sprague. You could just hear Kevin Burkhardt pissed off and annoyed.
You just have somebody in the booth that buzzes down.
It's not
earpiece, fumble, no fumble, move on. Or, hey, you missed a pass interference there. Throw a flag down on the ground. Or, hey, pick that flag up. That wasn't pass interference. It's a very easy fix, but they won't do it for some stupid reason. Let's dive back into college football, including a poll question that I put up last night. How do we feel about it? We'll dive into that coming up next, but first, here's Schulte with SportsCenter.
Now, from the Spirit Mountain Casino Sports Desk, a SportsCenter update on 1080 The Fan.
This update brought to you by Toro Mexican Kitchen. Transport yourself to Baja, Mexico with delicious regional dishes and cocktails. Book your table today at ToroPDX.com. First on the Fan, the Seattle Seahawks managed to survive the Washington Commanders with a last-second field goal from Jason Myers. 29-26, the final. One of 5 games actually decided by a last-second three-pointer. The Seahawks now 6-3, tied with the Niners atop the NFC West. Week 10 of the NFL wrapping up with Monday Night Football tonight. The Bills hosting the Denver Broncos. Buffalo a 7-point favorite. Kickoff at 5:15 on ESPN. In the NBA, your Trailblazers not able to get it done against the LeBron-less Los Angeles Lakers. Final 116-110. Anthony Davis going off for 30. Portland off tonight before facing the Jazz in Salt Lake City tomorrow. Lots of college football news. Texas A&M firing head coach Jimbo Fisher after a 45-25 record through 6 seasons. The Aggies are going to have to pay a record $76 million buyout. And breaking this morning, Mississippi State firing head coach Zach Arnett after going 4-6 this year. He took over the program after the death of Mike Leach last December. And former Duck defensive coordinator and current San Diego State head coach Freddie Hoke announcing his retirement at the end of the year. He led the Aztecs to a school record 12 wins in 2021. More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. I'm Schulte from the Spirit Mountain Casino Sports Desk. Get in the game at Spirit Mountain Casino. Watch and wager on all the pro and college action. Learn more at spiritmountain.com.
Go deeper on the Trailblazers. The Rose Garden Report with host Sean Hyken. Download the Rose Garden Report on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Sponsored by AutoZone. Get in the zone. Free battery testing, free battery charging, and replacement batteries that fit your needs. That's what makes AutoZone America's #1 battery destination. Get in the zone. AutoZone.
Hey, it's Souk, and let me tell you, there's a huge difference between having just a backyard and a true outdoor living space. After Vulcan Design and Construction finished with the project in my house, I can tell you it's worth it to work with the experts. Whatever you're dreaming of for your home, covered patio, custom fire pit, or an outdoor kitchen, the team at Vulcan can make that dream a reality and help you take your vision to the next level. For inspiration and ideas, check out the photos of their award-winning projects or schedule a free design consultation at vulcandc.com. That's vulcandc.com.
Dear ski instructor, class is in session. You've got a front row seat to all the action. So get your pencil and paper ready because we've got a thing or two to teach you. Check out the Toyota Highlander's sick moves and get in on the nonstop thrills and excitement of the 4Runner. With the Highlander Hybrid's sharp handling and insane performance, this ride's gonna get pretty exhilarating. Think you can keep up? Follow us. Toyota. Trade in any used vehicle and buy or lease a select 2023 or newer Toyota 4Runner, Tacoma, Tundra, Tundra Hybrid, Highlander, or Highlander Hybrid to receive 2 all-access season passes to Mount Hood Meadows. Toyota, let's go places.
Must trade in any used vehicle and buy or lease a select new 2023 or newer Toyota at a participating Oregon Southwest Washington Toyota dealer in order to qualify. 2 passes valued at $1,259 each and valid only at Mount Hood Meadows for the 2023-2024 season. Cannot be redeemed for cash limited time offer while supplies last. Offer ends 12/5/23.
If you've been arrested for a DUI, call the Reynolds Defense Firm. This is McDaniel Reynolds with the Reynolds Defense Firm, and we specialize in just one thing. We represent good people facing DUI charges. If you've been arrested, the first thing you need is to find the right law firm to help you. The kind of law firm you can place your faith and trust into. A law firm that you can believe in, and one that will believe in you too. The Reynolds Defense Firm is exactly that kind of law firm for the clients we work with. We do fantastic legal work, and our team is second to none. While every case is unique and outcomes differ, what I can say is that our successes in the courtroom often border on amazing. And this isn't just a happy coincidence. Our attorneys have more than 35 years of experience in Oregon's DUI laws, and we understand the criminal justice system inside and out. When I say we do just one thing, I mean it. And this is why we are so effective. The Reynolds Defense Firm isn't right for everyone, but we are exactly the right firm to help good people who face DUI charges. Please keep our number in your telephone, and if someone you believe in has been arrested for a DUI, please call us right away. The Reynolds Defense Firm. We're solid. We're here if you need us, and we are very good at what we do.
Experience the ultimate venue for football fans at A. Enjoy the lights, sound, and splendor of the region's largest video wall and indulge in game day bites at the Stadium Sports Bar and Grill, or up the excitement at A Sportsbook, where you can wager on your favorite college and professional teams. From parlays to teasers, money lines, and props, A Sportsbook has the widest selection of bets and screens to enhance your fandom. A sounds like fun. A is committed to responsible gambling. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call the Washington State Gambling Helpline, 800-547-6133.
Don't miss Provember at Lowe's. Save $80 on a DeWalt Combo Kit and save $20 on a 5-gallon pail of HGTV Home by Sherwin-Williams All-Purpose Power Primer. Plus, MVP's members earn 3 times the bonus points on DeWalt and HGTV Home by Sherwin-Williams products. Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. While supplies last, selection varies by location. Bonus points calculated before tax and fees after applicable discounts, if any. Valid through 11/22, subject to change.
Rainy today and 55 degrees.
Weather brought to you by AutoZone. Free battery testing, free battery charging, and replacement batteries that fit your needs. That's what makes AutoZone America's #1 battery destination. Get in the zone. AutoZone.
This is Dirt and Sprague on 1080 The Fan.
Well, we got a couple of poll questions up at Dirt and Sprague on Twitter if you want to go vote. I was curious to throw this out. So I know this is something that Oregon State fan has dealt with all year, and they came out with a change to the playoff format saying that the Pac-2 can't get an automatic qualifying spot in the college football playoff.
I don't believe that's official yet, but
I don't think it is either.
trending that way, yes.
Which, I mean, you got to do that. You can't let an AQ spot go to one of 2 teams. So there had to have been a change there. There still will be a pathway to them depending on how the conference stuff looks and all that. But I know this has been a fear of Oregon State fan all like with the conference realignment, what is going to happen? Washington fans, I'm sure, will go through this as well of like, hey, Kalen DeBoer, he's going to be an attractive name out there. Oregon fan, we are as, battered and bruised as you could be as a fan base.
Yeah.
Because we've had a lot of coaches that have left. You know the last time Oregon had a coach who was there for 5 years was Mike Bellotti?
I was going to guess Bellotti.
They have not, because Chip was there for 4, Helfrich was 4, Taggart was 1, Cristobal was 4, and now we're in, obviously, year 2 of Lanning. So I was just curious, I threw this out, which fan base should be most worried about losing their head coach? The answer to me is none of them. I don't think any of them are going anywhere. But if you played the game, Jonathan Smith is running away with it right now at 47%. I was kind of surprised by that.
Well, I don't believe Jonathan would leave this year.
Mm-hmm.
My stance on this is, unfortunately, I think they're going to find a way to not allow the Washington State, Oregon State to be possible next year, even if you say, highest ranking team, whatever the wording would be.
For your at-large bid or whatever, yeah.
I'm not convinced their schedule will be hard enough for them to get enough respect to be in that conversation.
That's fair.
Certainly Washington State today doesn't look like a program that'll do much of anything next year. And this was kind of my fear, and reading about this on Friday afternoon was a little discouraging.
Kind of flew under the radar this weekend with all these changes potentially coming.
I wouldn't vote Jonathan, and I would say because I think Jonathan at least waits another year or 2 to see what the landscape is. If he goes into next year and there's not a pathway, I could see maybe it's starting to kind of go, okay, what are we dealing with here? Because then players are going to start to go, oh, I can't compete, and I have to and I worry that's when it hits. If I had to vote for one there, that's a hard one.
It is really. I ended up voting for my coach. I don't think he's going anywhere, but I ended up voting for my coach.
Well, but okay, so here's the thing that I don't get. I don't know how Mario could leave 2 years ago. Willie did the lying in front of the media, albeit 1 year, and then you also had Chip. I don't know how we still have Duck fan that goes, no, I can't see it. Like, I can't see it either. But I don't dismiss the idea that it definitely could happen.
Oh, for sure.
A&M comes in and says, we'll give you 3% ownership stake in this oil company and $88 million and make you the 3rd highest paid college football coach in every resource imaginable. But I would also respond, and this has been my only criticism of the Oregon athletic situation. If you really wanted to, and coaching is important, you can pay your coach more money. And Oregon's never really been one of those. They don't underpay their coaches, but they're also not jumping to pay their coaches the way some of the other programs do.
Mm-hmm.
You could certainly say that's a good thing. Look what it got him in Dan Lanning. But I think right now, of all the names I've seen on the list, and don't forget there's going to be guys that emerge that we don't talk about, it's Lanning, and it's not particularly close for me. I don't want Lane Kiffin. I don't want Urban Meyer. I'm not sure about Elko yet. It's a good job at Duke. Can we do it for like a little longer? And you can say Lanning, but Lanning has the pedigree of Georgia defense, instant gratification and recruiting. And oh, by the way, yeah, no Pac-12 title game yet, but kind of on his way to a Pac-12 title game, if not the conference title in general and maybe a playoff. If I was to pick one of the group of names, I'd go him.
Here's what I would say. You're not, like I brought that up earlier. Any Duck fan who wants to just cover their eyes and act like there's no chance it could happen, go ahead and bury your head in the sand all you want. Do I think, would I put my money on saying he is going to leave? No, I don't think he's going. I think the Mario situation was an alma mater. Like, of all the jobs to open up, there was a handful of them.
I think his mom was also sick.
His mom was sick. Like, dude, there's just ties in there. Like, there's no tie to Dan Lanning going to Texas A&M. They're going to throw a bag of cash at him. He will be near the top of the list. That is a reality. And it's a world that you just have to embrace because it comes with success. It's the same thing with Kalen DeBoer. It's the same thing with Jonathan Smith. You know who we were talking about in this light a month and a half ago who is no longer getting referenced at all? Jake Dickert. A month and a half ago, we thought, hey, is Jake Dickert leaving? Is that why they're sucking? Is he starting to sniff around other jobs? Now they've lost 6 games in a row, and I didn't even put him in the poll question because they can't win right now. So
who would want this?
Exactly.
You know?
So that's like it's a good problem to have because it means that you're having success at your program. I don't think he's just going to jump for a pile of cash. Here's what you brought up something there, though, that I am curious about, and that is what's going to happen this offseason. So if he gets, like, the dream scenario for Oregon, you win this weekend, you win against Oregon State, you go to a college football playoff after beating Washington. That's a dream scenario. If that happens, I think that dude's going to be able to walk into the athletic department and put down an empty check and say, here's what I want.
He just got extended.
He just got extended last year. You know why he got extended? It was because Auburn was open, and we went through this last year. Auburn was going to sniff it around.
Yeah.
He went from, I think, $4 million to $6.77.
It'll be 7 by 2020.
Yeah. So he's nearing $7 million. If you look at $7 million, that puts you in borderline top 15 coaches in the country.
Yeah.
And this year, if A&M comes with the bag, he makes the playoff. Like, dude, he's going to get a new deal. And they're going to rewrite it, and he's going to make $10 million a year. Oregon will pay.
They're going to have to up it sooner because it sounds I was just looking at the workings of that contract. It's like closer to the end is when you start to get, I think he's at 4.6 or 7 now, and he has $200,000 a year escalators essentially plus bonuses that'll get him to
What I find interesting here, and I know we're already against it, which is kind of the definition of the Monday show, but
theme of the day.
I find it interesting. None of us said DeBoer. None of us kicked around the idea of DeBoer, and largely with Washington, I feel like it's Michael Penix and Washington, whereas
interesting,
it's Dan Lanning in Oregon. And I'm not saying DeBoer doesn't deserve credit. My takeaway when I hear Washington stuff is like, it's a lot of Penix. And look, Penix has been great, but none of us voted DeBoer here. Why? He might be, I'll go check the poll. Is he the lowest results of the question of the ones you put on there?
Lanning is somehow the lowest, and I don't get that.
So that's Duck fan burying their heads in the sand, doing the thing where like, no way, my coach is going to leave. He's loyal. Like, no, you've already been trounced by the whole loyalty's not real thing. I don't think he's leaving. I don't think any of them are leaving. But it's interesting, none of us mentioned DeBoer.
Isn't that funny?
Like, he doesn't get mentioned the way that other coaches get mentioned.
It's not his fault. It's the fact that Washington isn't the hot stepping stool that Oregon's become. I mean, 2 national championships, obviously not, since Helfrich left, but big prominence as compared to Washington. Yeah, they got to the CFP in 2016, but Oregon's just been there more. So,
but he's the last. But he's had a better start in his job than Lanning.
He has.
He's bested Lanning twice.
I don't disagree, but
he took over a program that was not as ready to win.
4-18
as Oregon was with Lanning.
Yeah,
I know we got to go. Maybe this is the frustration of Duck fans here. Everything that every single coach since Helfrich has done has been helped by Nike money, and this Oregon prominence, at least for Mario Cristobal, from Willie Taggart leaving, it's like, oh, look at the success that they've had there, at least with Cristobal. That money is here. It's not at the other schools. So maybe Duck fans are just kind of getting sick of this. Like, it may not be so much like head in the sand. It's just like, God, I am so tired of this that people aren't looking at Oregon as just like it's more than a stepping stool here, and this money ain't available. I get it. They got cash, but they don't have Nike cash down at College Station.
You're listening to too many trolls, man. You got to get off social media. That's the problem, and it's a problem in society. But yeah, it is funny. A lot of people don't. You just don't even really entertain the notion.
When you hear Washington, do you think DeBoer or Penix first? Because I think when you talk Oregon, Dan Lanning is a name you hear all the time, nationally, locally. It's, hey, how about the Huskies? How
I think
about
it's
Penix's
because
season? Like, it's not as DeBoer driven as you would have think with this start.
I don't disagree with you there. I think a lot of it is personalities. Like I think DeBoer to me is more of a Jonathan Smith, like a really smart X's and O's guy. He's not in your face. There's not the talk with your helmet video before Colorado games. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't. Lanning has those. There was a moment of him celebrating with, I think it was Evan Williams on the field where he's like punching, like chest. You can see the veins coming out. Like he's just that kind of guy. And so I think that's going to get people talking a little bit more. We got another poll question. We'll answer it. We'll send you off on your way on a Monday next on The Fan.
It's The Fan on
leaving? Whose coach is going to be loyal? Who's bailing?
Well, I wouldn't. I'd add to this too. I don't know if it's you or I that fired up. People just getting fired up in general.
Just fired up in general. Nobody likes the idea of their coach leaving.
I certainly get it.
It pisses everybody off if you throw out any name of like if Lanning's not going anywhere, Smith's not going anywhere, DeBoer's not going anywhere. It's like, dude, I don't have that approach. I don't think any of them are leaving. If you ask me to put money on it. But don't ever say that your coach isn't going anywhere. This is college football and money talks, man. This is how it works.
I think at one point Dirt was with all you, and then he got bit, and he was like, I'm done
Dude,
believing.
I did that with Mario 2 years ago. I was like, he's not going anywhere. He's committed. He wants to be here.
Whether it's Urban or somebody else, I do think with the A&M thing, there's going to be somebody that emerges or leaves that nobody saw. Like, would you be the most surprised if Dabo did the leg drop on Randy Savage on Clemson and just was like, I'm at the NWO, brother.
Screw you, Tyler from Spartanburg.
I'm just saying, like, nothing would surprise me with that job at this point.
Nobody's brought up Bobby Petrino is on their staff, right?
He is.
What did Sprague say before the year?
Yeah. They didn't make him the interim head coach. I was kind of surprised by that.
Well, don't worry. They're giving him time.
Yeah, I think I would still go after Urban. I'll maintain that opinion. That place does not care about morals or anything, and that would be my first choice. I think the underrated choice would be Lane Kiffin. If you can't get somebody to jump at the pile of cash, Lane Kiffin is a good coach, but he's restricted with resources at Ole Miss, and I could see him jump into that job in a heartbeat. We put up a poll question. Why did College Game Day choose James Madison over Oregon State? And 84% of you say scared to face the music.
Definitely the thing. They can say whatever they want. They're terrified of it.
Definitely the thing. Josh Pate's going to be in Corvallis this weekend, and he joined the show today. You can go check that. Service Patriots Podcast, 1080thefan.com, at Dirt and Sprague, and at 1080thefan. I don't even know where to begin for tomorrow. We're going to have a lot of leftovers.
Tons of leftovers. Go Broncos. Keep it close, please.
Hey, you got to gamble on the Broncos tonight?
Broncos country. We riding?
Liking the Broncos catching 7? Yeah, we like that.
Is it 7 or 7.5?
I think it's 7 right now. Okay.
7.5 gets me in. I'm in. Let's go Broncos.
Make that a show bet. Don't let me down, Broncos. There you go. We will talk to you tomorrow at 6 a.m. Colin is next. You're listening to 1080 The Fan.